It all comes down to this: Jack Ciattarelli and Mikie Sherrill, a final face-off. Who will be the next governor of New Jersey?
A race that's attracted the eyes of the nation, powered by issues facing all of us. Cost of living.
We'll lower electricity bills on day one.
Our safety, our kids' schools.
We're going to have the tools to fight back.
And a polarized political world.
The Republican, a former assemblyman turned entrepreneur, his third run at the state's highest office. And the Democrat, a 4-term congresswoman, a former Navy helicopter pilot, who's hoping now to replace fellow Democrat Phil Murphy.
What vision would they plant in the Garden State? Their final pitch to voters, live right here tonight.
This is an Eyewitness News special presentation. Countdown to the debate.
The stage is set for the New Jersey gubernatorial debate tonight at the New Brunswick Performing Arts Center.
In less than 30 minutes, Democrat Mikie Sherrill and Republican Jack Ciattarelli will go head-to-head for a final time ahead of Election Day. And good evening and welcome in to all of you. I'm Mike Marza.
And I'm Sade Better-Edouin. This is a tight and closely watched race. Top of mind tonight for voters: the high cost of living, the government shutdown, immigration, and the political tension right now in this country.
So much to talk about. New Jersey, one of just 2 states electing governors this fall, but all eyes will be on the Garden State. President Trump has endorsed Ciattarelli. Could this race be a measure of Trump's influence? And how will Democrats respond? Here's how it's all going to go down tonight. The candidates will answer questions from the moderators, including our Bill Ritter and Tamala Edwards from our sister station WPVI in Philadelphia. We'll also have questions from our media partner, Univision.
And here are the debate rules and what you can expect tonight. The candidate to whom the question is posed will have 1 minute to answer, followed by a 1-minute response from the opposing candidate. The candidate who received the initial question will then receive a 30-second rebuttal. The candidates have agreed to a 30-second opening statement and a 1-minute closing statement at the end.
As we count down to the debate, we will check in with our team of analysts: Dr. Ashley Koning from Rutgers University, Micah Rasmussen from Rider University, and our own ABC News political director, Avery Harper.
But first, live from where it's all about to happen, our team of New Jersey reporters, Anthony Johnson and Tony Yates, who have been with the candidates this week. We begin with Tony and the Jack Ciattarelli campaign. Tony?
Yeah, you know, Republican Jack Ciattarelli, as you guys said, has been running for New Jersey governor for 10 years now. In fact, 10 years ago, he was actually a critic of President Trump, but he has now embraced that ideology, and he is hoping for victory this time.
In 27 days, we're declaring victory. We're winning this race.
Candidate Jack Ciattarelli wowing supporters deep in Ocean County this afternoon, less than a month before Election Day, working to guarantee they also show up at the polls.
People are frustrated up and down this state with the affordability crisis because of property taxes, their electric bills, housing, child care if you have small kids. People are angry about these things. And if you're angry, you got to do something about it. Vote.
For 10 years now, Ciattarelli has had his eye on the governor's seat. He's a businessman who's also spent years representing constituents on the state level in Trenton. One of his primary platforms, cutting tax burdens in the state, making it easier for older residents to stay, making it more attractive for young people to plant roots here. He outlined part of that plan last month in the first debate against his Democratic opponent, Mikie Sherrill.
How about we make all retirement income tax-free? How about we freeze property taxes once you hit age 70? How about we make the first 2 years of income, post-high school, post-college, tax-free so young people can get a start?
He belted out just a few of his day one decrees should he win the seat. The immigration issue.
On day one, executive order number 1 on day 1, no town in our state will be a sanctuary city, and we will not be a sanctuary state.
Pulling the state out of a green energy agreement that he says has led to higher energy costs for residents.
There'll be no wind farms off our Jersey shore, I'm telling you right now. We'll lower electricity bills on day 1 by pulling out of Reggie.
And he promises to reform education, remodeling how state funds are allocated to school districts, making it easier for charter schools to have access to those funds.
The fact that we slipped from 2 to 12 on national report cards says something. We need to do what places like Mississippi and Louisiana have done, a high-impact curriculum.
Ciattarelli believes New Jersey is ready for change. Sherrill biting back, accusing Ciattarelli of being in lockstep with President Trump, a partnership she says New Jersey cannot afford. The big question, will the moves being made in Washington help sway voters here in New Jersey?
She's not from New Jersey, so I got a really simple idea. How about we elect a Jersey guy?
Now, Ciattarelli has held public office before in the New Jersey State Assembly. He is now hoping once again to lead the state. For now, we're live here in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Tony Gates, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Tony. Now we want to go to Anthony Johnson with a focus on the Mikie Sherrill campaign. Anthony?
Yeah, you heard Tony talk about the Trump effect in this campaign. We'll see what that will play out with the voters coming on November 4th. Mikie Sherrill has been all over the state campaigning in all 21 counties, and she's counting on a large Democratic turnout to pull this race off. Following her primary night victory, Mikie Sherrill focusing on being visible in all 21 counties of the state from Gloucester to Bergen. It's been a whirlwind campaign.
I'm Erin. Nice to meet you.
The 53-year-old mother of four says making New Jersey affordable will be her prime goal if elected governor, as prices of food, electric, and many essentials continue to rise. She takes issue with GOP candidate Jack Ciattarelli, claiming he sides with the president when it comes to the economy.
Again and again, I think voters are seeing Trump is costing them an incredible amount of money. And every time they go to Jack to say, what are you going to do about it? His response largely is, I agree with it.
Her latest focus is online bullying and pushing a ban on cell phones in classrooms. This is something she plans to tackle if she's elected governor.
What should schools be doing? Because right now they're not doing enough. They're handing out computers like they're candy, and they're putting no safety protections on them.
The Congresswoman from New Jersey's 11th District continues to deal with the release of her military records, which shows she failed to report a cheating scandal and did not walk with her class. Most recently, she's taking issue with the president over the government shutdown and his move to suspend federal funding for the Gateway Tunnel project, accusing her opponent of saying it's not important.
It's despicable that the President of the United States is costing us so much money and attacking our economy. And it's despicable that Jack Ciattarelli is going right along with it.
Democrats turned out in big numbers for the primary, and she hopes the threat of a GOP takeover in the state will motivate her supporters to get out and vote.
We are working to take that enthusiasm and ensure that every single person gets to the polls.
Yeah, and that's why tonight's debate will be so important. Once again, they'll be talking directly to the voters. They'll be talking about all of the issues that we have mentioned, including things like immigration. And once again, when this is all said and done, they're all hoping, both sides, that the voters will decide to pull the lever for them on November the 4th. That is the latest live from New Brunswick. Anthony Johnson, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Anthony, thank you.
Well, let's bring in ABC News political director Avery Harper now from D.C. Avery, great to see you as always.
Good to be with you.
So we're finally here to this debate. So much has led up to this moment, but we're having this discussion tonight with this debate amidst a federal government shutdown. How much do you think the national conversation will play into the gubernatorial debate tonight?
Listen, I think the national conversation is going to be a big part of the conversation tonight, particularly for Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill, right? She is one of those lawmakers who is continuing to get paid amid this federal shutdown when there's many federal workers who are not going to be receiving paychecks and federal contractors who are not going to be made whole at the end of this. So I'm curious to see how she talks about that tonight. I am also interested to see how Jack Ciattarelli, how he defends himself as Mikie Sherrill attempts to tie him to the current president, to Donald Trump, right? The anti-Trump sentiment that there may be within the state of New Jersey could be a powerful motivating factor for supporters of Sherrill. So I'm interested to see how he talks about that too.
Be key, right? Because I know the last debate, I think Trump was brought up about a dozen times at least. Clearly, he's going to be a big issue. And one thing is Sherrill is definitely going to want to tie him to the Trump administration. You also touched upon immigration, another big issue. What are you looking for there?
Right. I'm looking to see how these candidates answer questions about continued ICE raids that we've seen in places across the country. Also, militarized force within the state of New Jersey. Would these candidates support President Trump bringing the National Guard to New Jersey? How would they react, right? How would they react to some of the potential clashes that could come down the line if they were in the governor's chair? Those are going to be big questions, and there's lots of folks who are paying attention. We are in the lead up to this election, only a few weeks out till the day that many New Jersey residents are going to be casting those ballots, and so everything that they have to say from the debate stage matters.
Yeah, it certainly does.
And how they handle some of the adversity or criticism they faced along the way, including Mikie Sherrill and this recent development with her military records. How do you think that's going to play on the stage tonight? What is she going to say about it? We've heard a little bit of the pushback from her campaign. And then do you believe that Jack Ciattarelli will hammer down on that point as the two face off tonight?
I totally believe that Jack Ciattarelli is going to make mention of that tonight. Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill is going to have to address the accusations from Jack Ciattarelli and attempt to set the record straight, right? What we've heard from her campaign is essentially they are claiming that she was not involved in that cheating scandal, that she essentially was not allowed to walk in her academy graduation because she refused to name names. I'm interested to see how she navigates that tonight. I expect for her to make the conversation more about the fact that her unredacted military records were released after a request from a Ciattarelli ally, but that's definitely something that many voters are going to be looking to see how she answers tonight.
Yeah, she's already said this is a weaponization of government records.
We'll see how all that plays out. Avery, hang tight for us if you don't mind. We're about 20 minutes, a little less than 20 minutes, 16 minutes now until the debate begins here, but we have more conversations to have.
Yeah, we certainly do. We're also joined by Dr. Ashley Koenig, Director of the Eagleton Center for Public Interest Polling at Rutgers University, and Micah Rasmussen, who's Director of Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Thank you both for being with us tonight. Let's get right down to it. What are you looking for tonight? Who needs to do what tonight?
I mean, they both certainly need to make a stance in these final weeks here. And we've kind of had this campaign of overlapping. Is this about the federal level and what's going on with the Trump administration? Or is this about state-centric politics? But throughout all of it, the bottom line is this is about affordability and cost of living in the state. And I think both of them need to hit home their final messages that are going to be carried through the media narrative about taxes, property taxes, and what people in New Jersey can and can't afford.
Yeah, and they both have two different approaches when it comes to affordability.
They have, and they've both made a lot of mileage out of negative charges, even taken words of their opponents out of context. They've got about as much mileage as they can out of Jack Ciattarelli is going to raise your sales tax by 10%, and Mikie Sherrill thinks that you should be paying more in electricity rates. Well, neither one of those things are really true. They've spent millions of dollars advertising it, and so what I'm looking for tonight is, can they bring that argument home in a way that moves us beyond where we've been with silly season so far?
Micah, to that point, Jack Ciattarelli outspent Mikie Sherrill in this election, largely spent on these media campaigns. In fact, let's play a couple, so we want to get your thoughts on how this has really become one of the main talking points from both campaigns. First up, let's play the Mikie Sherrill ad against Jack Ciattarelli, trying to tie him to the Trump administration and President Trump himself. Let's listen.
MAGA's coming for New Jersey with Trump-endorsed Republican Jack Ciattarelli. Trump brags Ciattarelli is now 100% MAGA. We've got to stop him. With Democrat Mikie Sherrill, Navy helicopter pilot, federal prosecutor, mother of 4, drove a longtime Republican incumbent out of office. Now, Mikie has a plan.
To drive down costs so families can get ahead.
Including a crackdown on predatory landlords jacking up rent. Courage to fight. Strength to win. For governor, Democrat Mikie Sherrill.
Ashley, has that been successful? Has she hit her mark with that?
You know, I think now it becomes very complicated with everything that's transpired in the past couple of weeks, given what we've seen with Ciattarelli accusing her of not walking and finding those records, Sherrill fighting back and saying about the transparency leak. But obviously there is intention in that message, tying Ciattarelli to Trump, touting her status as a former Navy pilot, touting motherhood. Let's not forget gender in this race at all here as well, and trying to make it this tough, courageous persona, and coming from a district that was long held by a Republican. So, there is definite motive behind what she's doing. And when we polled earlier this summer, Trump was a major factor for many New Jerseyans, including independents. So that's supposed to stick home.
And speaking of independents, I know that is just a sliver of the voting block, but it's going to play crucial, really, in this election.
The closer this race is, and some of the polling has shown that it's very close, the more independents matter, the more those unaffiliated voters matter, because it's not just about driving out your own vote. You need to do that too. But at the same time, if you can persuade the 7, 8, 10% of the electorate that's still up for grabs, in a tied race, that can make all the difference who gets more of those voters.
So what are you looking for in terms of messaging to actually reach those independents? Because there are many women who are breaking for Sherrill, and then you've got also men, higher even income earning men, who are breaking for Ciattarelli.
Absolutely. So clearly, Mikie Sherrill's bio matters, and it resonates well with lower information voters who maybe haven't been following the race quite as closely as some of us have. So that matters, and you'll hear more about it. And the reason why some people say you hear too much about it is because it really works, right? These candidates don't do something that doesn't work. For Ciattarelli, he wants to show that he's in tune on affordability, on the fact that New Jersey is too expensive, and he's going to be trying to drive it home, again, among those male voters, but he needs to reach beyond them, I think, to get a little more traction.
We're talking about just how close this race is, and I remember moderating the last governor's debate. And before the debate, there was a lot of talk saying that Murphy was ahead, some in double digits. And then in the end, that race, Ciattarelli was only 3 percentage points. You're seeing a lot of that mirrored in this race. So
absolutely.
Is this going to be a horse race to the end?
I think we have to assume that it is. I mean, that last race, 85,000 votes separated the incumbent governor and Jack Ciattarelli. He immediately said, I'm going to do this again. I can make up that ground. And he has set out, he wants to work more closely with the cities. He's campaigning in black churches. He's campaigning in Latino parades. And he is trying to take just a sliver of her base away from her to make up that little bit of ground that he's got to do to get over the top. Of course, to do that, he's got to retain everything he had too. And he's running in a tougher environment because his party's defending the White House this time.
Which is interesting to see him trying to toe that line, whether or not he wants to be associated with this so-called MAGA movement, which is why that advertising came into play. So he went on the offensive very early in this campaign and launched an ad that really has kind of haunted Mikie Sherrill throughout. We're going to bring Avery Harper back in. Let's play the ad, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
If you could pass one piece of legislation, what would it be?
Wow, I would love, that's a really good question because there's so many that are coming to mind right now. But right now, I would love at this point to pass legislation to,
You're kidding me, right? You want to be governor and you can't answer that question? We have skyrocketing electric bills in a state people can't afford. We need to fix New Jersey. I will.
Wow, not a lot of great moments there. Really tough. But also, she's not only had this misstep, she also had an interview with Charlamagne the God, a popular radio host, talking about, how her family made a bunch of money, I think upwards of $7 million. He's capitalizing on that.
Yes, absolutely. She said, I'll have to check on that. I'll have to let you know. It so happens that they were her husband's investments, right? The point that he's making is, I think I would know if $7 million of family income came into the house, right? So there's no question, and I don't want to make any excuses for her. There's no question she's very cautious, sometimes overly cautious. You've seen a lot of this nationally. Harris was very cautious. Biden was very cautious. They were cautious of him in that White House. And so this approach sometimes trips you up if you haven't thought about it, if you haven't vetted it, you haven't figured out what you want to say. You got to be a little more nimble on your feet. And I think she's learned that as the campaign has gone on.
Let's bring back in ABC News political director Avery Harper in D.C. tonight, watching all of this unfold. Avery, we played the advertisements, and we know what's been happening on the campaign trail, and both of them going back and forth. Real Clear Politics, the average of several different polls, has this race down to perhaps 3 percentage points. Sade mentioned what happened 4 years ago when the polling was off and Ciattarelli only lost by about 3 points to Murphy. What should we be looking for tonight to say that's a big win for her or that's a big win for him?
I think it's whatever the viral moments that come out of tonight's broadcast, out of this debate, that I'm going to be looking to see, because the fact is people are really paying attention at this point, because we are just in the run-up to the election, to election day. But, you know, to go back to the conversation that was being had about Kamala Harris being cautious and Mikie Sherrill being cautious also, the fact is that those moments are also tied to the idea that Democrats kind of struggle on their messaging, particularly around affordability. And so that is going to be something that Mikie Sherrill is going to have to set the record straight on. In terms of Jack Ciattarelli, for him and for Republicans, there is a hope that this is a state that has shifted right. If you look at what happened back last November, this is a place that shifted right in favor of Trump. He lost it by about 6 percentage points, but that is a big difference from the previous presidential election there, where he lost by a much bigger margin. And so there is the idea that this could be a better environment for Jack Ciattarelli to run in today and in this time versus 4 years ago. And so we'll have to see exactly what happens on the stage, but there are high stakes for both of these candidates tonight.
Well, Avery, you mentioned the stage. Less than 8 minutes to go, and let's take you live inside the new Brunswick Performing Arts Center, where our Bill Ritter and WPVI's Tamala Edwards are addressing the small audience that has been gathered inside as they prepare to ask these candidates questions. You will see it live unfold here in a little more than 7 minutes.
Yeah, I actually want to pick up on what Avery was talking about in terms of really the gains that Republicans have made. Because, you know, when we look at the last election with Biden, he actually was, I think it was like a 15-point spread, something like that. Yeah. And then, you know, 4 years later, then all of a sudden it's like a 6-point spread. There are some gains that Republicans have made, even when it comes to registering new Republicans. I think there's, what, a difference of like 800, some 50,000?
Which is down from about 1 million, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Democrats are the larger party, but the margin has shrunk because Republicans have been doing the grassroots work of registering voters every month. Yeah.
So is this going to be just that, you know, it's like there's the rub,
it
like
could
right
be,
there.
Right? It all adds up when you're talking about a close race, right? It's not like anything is not going to matter when you've got a 3-point race or an even race or that kind of thing. Everything could potentially matter.
And I'm also curious to hear from you, Ashley, because so much has been made about President Trump's influence on this.
Right.
The people we're going to see tonight in a little more than 6 minutes are vying to replace Phil Murphy. How much will his record play a part in what's talked about? And how important is it for Mikie Sherrill to either cozy up to that record or try to distance herself from what happened with the Murphy administration?
Yeah, you know, you bring a good point in cozying up. I don't think we've really seen either candidate cozy up in the general to either of the figureheads of their party, and certainly not Ciattarelli to Trump, and certainly not, you know, Sherrill to Murphy. And so I think, though, Murphy has been overshadowed to a great extent because of the Trump factor. And I think he is the political figure that is looming less over this election. But Ciattarelli is very ready to tie Sherrill to him whenever he needs to, almost to the point where they're running two separate campaigns. Sherrill from a very kind of federal top-down level, Ciattarelli from a very kind of state-centric level, and saying this could be more Phil Murphy, 4 more years of the same. And so, you know, sometimes I feel like they're almost not communicating in the same language, or it's apples to oranges in what's happening.
Well, Sade and I were looking up the stat earlier, Micah, and in fact, neither party has held the New Jersey governorship for more than 2 consecutive terms since the mid-1970s.
60s.
1961.
Yeah, 61 is the last time it happened. That was the 3rd term, and then Dick Hughes won a 4th term in 65. So that's the only time since governors could be reelected it's ever happened. It's only happened that once.
Yeah, and normally another party does not take that 3rd term when it comes to the governor's debate. I mean, governor's race.
There's something about the governor's office that we view differently. In that same period of time, we haven't put a Republican in the U.S. Senate since 1972. But we view the governor's office as, I don't want to say it's nonpartisan, that's not it, but it's about competence. It's about running the government on a day-to-day basis. And just like Maryland had a popular Republican governor, Hogan, or Vermont had Governor Scott, Massachusetts had Governor Baker, we sort of go back and forth. In that same period of time, we've had lots of Democrats. We've also had Chris Christie, Christie Whitman, and Tom Kean, very popular governors.
Which is interesting because you haven't heard a lot of those culture war topics being discussed in the state of New Jersey, because instead of being on the outside or fringes or margins, they're trying to discuss issues that we're all talking about really at the dinner table. Let's check in with Avery Harper. We're less than 5 minutes now. And Avery, just before we let you go and as we watch this unfold tonight, I'll ask you the question that we've been asking both Micah and Ashley today. Jack Ciattarelli will win this debate tonight if he does what? And then the same for Mikie Sherrill.
Jack Ciattarelli will win this debate if he is able to muddle Mikie Sherrill's messaging on affordability. That is the central issue in this campaign. And so I think Mikie Sherrill will win this debate if she is effectively able to tie Jack Ciattarelli to Donald Trump. Like I said, anti-Trump sentiment is a very powerful mobilizing factor for voters, and that will make her successful in tonight's debate.
Well, Avery, thank you so much. I know you're going to watch this debate right along with us. So we are now just a few minutes away. But let's talk about the affordability issue again. That is key. I mean, we're even seeing it here in New York City. This is playing front and center in the mayoral campaign, and this is playing front and center in this election as well.
Yeah, but almost in two very different ways. And at least for New Jersey, it was that utility rate hike over the summer that made it tangible for voters, and it made them start paying attention. And it really picked up the campaign on both sides after kind of a dormant summer that we had. You know, and in reality, New Jersey, like Micah was saying, is a very purple state. This is why we see that ideological flip-flop among voters. And at the end of the day, New Jersey voters are left of center on social issues, but right of center when it comes to fiscal issues. And that's what's the key for these governor races.
Michael, we've got about 20 seconds left. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, on affordability, we're going to hear about housing. We're going to hear about electric prices. We're going to hear about property taxes. Those are the big drivers and the pain points for New Jersey families.
All right, sit tight, grab the popcorn. Micah, Ashley, thank you. We're just minutes away from the start of the final New Jersey debate, streaming live right here at ABC7NY, and of course airing live on Channel 7. Eyewitness News.
The two candidates, Mikie Sherrill and Jack Ciattarelli, facing off next from the New Brunswick Performing Arts Center. Our hour-long debate moderated by our own Bill Ritter and Tamala Edwards from our sister station, WPVI in Philadelphia.
The podium's all ready, and you can follow along during the debate with our live blog at abc7ny.com. Our team of analysts will be standing by throughout the debate, watching closely like all of you, and they're going to be back here at 8 o'clock with a full analysis from the big moments and tonight's conversation.
And for now, we send it to our team in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Pardon me?
Tonight, two candidates vying to lead New Jersey into a new era. Republican Jack Ciattarelli and Democrat Mikie Sherrill. New Jersey's next chapter is decided by you. Live from the New Brunswick Performing Arts Center and Rutgers University, the 2025 New Jersey Gubernatorial Debate. Your voice, your vote. Sponsored by ABC-7 in New York, WPVI-6 ABC in Philadelphia, the Edward J. Blaustein School of Planning and Public Policy at Rutgers University, and the New Brunswick Performing Arts Center. Tonight, two visions for Trenton take center stage. Our candidates are Republican Jack Ciattarelli and Democrat Mikie Sherrill. And now, Action News anchor Tamala Edwards and Eyewitness News anchor Bill Ritter.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to this debate between the Republican and Democratic candidates for governor of New Jersey. I'm Bill Ritter.
And I'm Tamala Edwards. Over the next hour, the candidates will answer questions from Bill and myself, as well as questions from our media partner, Univision. The candidates will also answer some questions that were submitted by voters through an online questionnaire.
Now, the debate was awarded by the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission. Gubernatorial candidates are mandated to participate in this debate under state law as a condition of attempting mutual funding positions under New Jersey's gubernatorial public financing program.
Under the debate rules, the candidate to whom the question is posed will have 1 minute to answer, followed by a 1 minute response from the opposing candidate. The candidate who received the initial question will then receive a 30-second rebuttal. The candidates have agreed to a 30-second opening statement and a 1 minute closing statement at the end of our debate.
Okay, so those are the ground rules. We're going to begin with the candidates' opening statements, and by prior draw, it all is going to start with Jack Ciattarelli. Sir?
New Jersey, we need change. We need an honest, qualified, hands-on CEO governor who will bring that change. Why? We have an overdevelopment crisis in our suburban communities. We have an affordability crisis because of property taxes and electricity bills. We have a public safety crisis because we don't let our police do their jobs any longer. We have a public education crisis because we've watered down the public school curriculum. Tonight, I'll give you a plan and very specific policy proposals on how to fix all the things that makes New Jersey so broken. I look forward to tonight's debate.
Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill.
Good evening, New Jersey. My name's Mikie Sherrill. I have a different kind of background, so I'll be a different kind of governor. Navy helicopter pilot, federal prosecutor, member of Congress, and mom of 4 kids. I am laser focused on driving down your costs, making New Jersey more affordable. I'm going to start by declaring a state of emergency on energy costs, make government more accountable to you, making it safer and more affordable. And I'm going to ensure that I am always fighting for all of you.
All right. It is now time to turn to the questions, and we're going to begin with you, Congresswoman Sherrill. According to the World Population Review, it costs 14% more to live in New Jersey compared to the rest of the nation. And it touches on so many issues, including gas, groceries, and housing. What are 3 specific things that you would do to ease that burden?
You know, I constantly hear about this from voters. So that's why on day 1, I'm declaring a state of emergency on energy prices, freezing rate hikes. I'm going to take on the PBMs. Those are those middlemen that can drive up drug prices up to 10 times, driving down your health care costs. And I'm going to ensure that I'm taking on those landlords that are colluding to drive up your rental prices. So housing, health care, utility costs immediately get to work driving down your costs. And quite frankly, we know my opponent won't do it because his number 1 donor is somebody who's actually under investigation for driving up those rental costs. So I'm going to continue to fight for New Jerseyans, and my opponent just won't.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
My opponent has put forth an illegitimate plan that isn't feasible. Even the governor, a member of her own party, has said that, I don't really think you can do that. There are 77 incumbent Democratic legislators, 52 of which are on the ballot this year, and not one has endorsed her plan. To get electricity rates down on day 1, I will pull us out of Reggie. The Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative is a carbon tax policy that has cost New Jersey $300 to $500 million a year for homeowners, tenants, and businesses, and it's been a failure. Electricity is at its all-time high, the air is no cleaner, and ratepayer dollars are going to other states. So we can provide some relief on day 1. We also have to take care of the property tax crisis, something you won't hear my opponent ever talk about. We need a new school funding formula in New Jersey. With a new school funding formula, we can have a more equitable distribution of state aid, and in so doing, reduce the property tax burden with our local school districts. We also have 2 other things that are driving the affordability crisis in New Jersey. Housing. We need more affordable housing. We just need to be smart about the way we do it. Another thing that's driving the affordability crisis is child care. And I have a specific plan on how to relieve that burden for families with young children.
So none of that is actually going to drive down costs for anyone here, and that's no surprise because my opponent has voted against over $1 billion in property tax relief for people. He's voted to raise taxes at every level of government in which he's served, and he continues to propose different actions that will raise taxes on the people of New Jersey.
Okay, thank you for that.
Bill, our rules are no rebuttals.
No double rebuttals. Yes, there's not the second one. But I'm going to go to you first, Mr. Ciattarelli, and talk about property tax, because New Jersey has one of the highest property tax rates in the country. We know that, more than $10,000 a year for the average person. Many residents remain limited by the federal government about how much they can actually deduct per year. Not long ago, as we all know, it was 100% deductible. Now it's a fraction of that. Given that, would you lower New Jersey's property tax? It sounded like your opponent did not think you would.
We need a new school funding formula. Anyone who's from New Jersey would know that anywhere from 15 to 20% of your property tax bill is municipal taxes, 15 to 20% are county taxes, but anywhere from 60 to 70% could be the school tax. And the reason why the school tax is so high in New Jersey is because of the way we distribute state aid to our schools. We need a new school funding formula. But there are other things that we can do to relieve the property tax burden. For example, make all property taxes deductible on the New Jersey tax return. Make all retirement income tax-free. Cap it at 1% for first-time home buyers, 1% of the assessed value of the home. My opponent voted no on the big, beautiful bill. You're now allowed to deduct up to $40,000 of your property taxes on your federal tax return. That, too, lessens the tax burden. So there's a number of different things that we can do. Also in that bill, there was a child care tax credit. There's a credit for private tuition, and it doesn't tax tips, overtime, or Social Security. The big, beautiful bill put more close to $5,000 in the pocket of the average middle-class New Jerseyan. She voted no.
So my opponent likes to talk about how he's from New Jersey, but anybody who's actually fighting for New Jersey would not raise taxes at every single level of government in which he served, voting to raise taxes. He's voted against over $1 billion in property tax relief. He's against tax relief for seniors, and he's for Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, which would undermine the ability to deduct almost $30 billion taxes from New Jerseyans. So here's the thing. He says he's from New Jersey, but he's not fighting for New Jerseyans. In fact, I'll tell you, I just read an article the other day about how he's voted against even things like giving rapists parental rights. He's voted to give rapists parental rights for the victim of their rape. I can't understand how anybody who wants to be a fighter for New Jersey would ever do something like that.
Mr. Ciattarelli, response?
My opponent has been blatantly lying all throughout this campaign, saying that we're going to raise the sales tax to 10%. It's a lie. It's not true. We're not raising any taxes in New Jersey. I've talked about very specifically how to lower the income tax and the property tax bill all across New Jersey. At the last debate, when she was asked whether or not she would raise the sales tax, her exact words were, "I'm not going to commit myself to anything right now." That doesn't sound like somebody who's trying to relieve the tax burden in New Jersey, and New Jersey has faced the highest overall tax burden in the country.
Okay, thank you both. Congresswoman, the Ciattarelli campaign is asking for the full release of your military records. The National Archives, we know, say it's mistakenly releasing, and it did release, your personal information in those records 2 weeks ago. Since then, there have been questions about why you were not allowed to participate in the graduation ceremonies at the Naval Academy more than 30 years ago. Can you explain to voters why you were not allowed to participate?
Yeah, so I have addressed that. I've said, look, I didn't turn in some of my classmates, so I didn't walk at graduation because I come from an incredibly accountable place. But I went on to graduate. I was commissioned an officer in the United States Navy. I held positions of trust throughout the Navy, both as a helicopter pilot, as a Russian policy officer, as a flag aide to the deputy commander of the U.S. Atlantic Fleet during the Cole bombing and during 9/11. I received numerous awards and commendations, held the highest levels of security clearance. But here's what I think really demands an answer, is why my opponent still won't take accountability for the release of those records. It's under federal investigation that a member of his team, someone he vetted to be his lieutenant governor, actually got access to those records, said he was shocked and disgusted, and yet nevertheless shopped them out to reporters. When he was asked about it, he acted as if he had no idea what his campaign was doing. So either he's really incompetent or he's lying.
Your rebuttal, sir.
At the last debate, Mikie said that she was the most transparent gubernatorial candidate of all time. If she's so transparent, then approve the release of her disciplinary records at the Naval Academy so we can know why it is that she was punished. There was a cheating scandal in the early 1990s while she was there. We know for a fact that she wasn't allowed to participate in the graduation ceremony. We know for a fact that her name was not listed in the commencement exercise program. She says it's because she didn't turn in classmates. That's the honor code at West Point. That's not the honor code at the Naval Academy. You don't get punished for that. I think she was punished for something else. And so I think she needs to come clean. I think the people in New Jersey deserve an answer as to why she was punished at the Naval Academy. And she's trying to create a giant smokescreen for something the National Archives has taken complete responsibility for and apologized for with regard to a Freedom of Information Act request that was perfectly legal. The National Archives has taken responsibility and apologized for what they did.
Congresswoman?
They're having a federal investigation right now into that. But look, we have a federal government under the Trump administration that has released paperwork on tons of people and their Social Security information. Seniors come to me all the time. We have a president who's told governors they have to turn over all of this information, things like voting records and license plate numbers. And we now have a candidate who's turned over all of my information to reporters. I'm certainly not going to open up my classmates' hundreds of records so he can rampage through them on a witch hunt. He should take responsibility. He should turn back those records in which he still holds.
Okay.
Mr. Ciattarelli, next question. Your opponent has criticized your connections to President Trump, who has endorsed you. Do you consider yourself part of the MAGA movement? And in this divided state, can you point to one major Trump policy that you support and one that you oppose?
I'm part of a New Jersey movement. We need change in New Jersey. We've got various crises that are raging across the state that are punishing the middle class. The Ciattarellis have been here for 100 years. 3 generations of Ciattarellis have all owned their own businesses here. I've had the opportunity and privilege to serve at every level of government, terminating myself each time, more times than not taking the salary or the benefits. I know what's going on in the state of New Jersey. I know what it is that we need to get done. I agree with the president in securing the border. I think that was a matter of national security. And I've said I'll secure New Jersey by us not being a sanctuary state nor having sanctuary cities. I disagree with the president on the Empire Wind Farm off of Long Island. We hope that that doesn't mean there'll be wind farms off our Jersey shore. He's put a temporary halt on that. I will make it permanent when I'm governor. But let me be clear. No matter who it is that's in the White House, my job is to stand up for the 9.3 million citizens of this state, and I will. I will fiercely advocate for them at all times. But let me also say this, that in times of need, it's best to have a relationship with whoever occupies the White House, and I will.
Congresswoman?
He's shown zero signs of standing up to this president. In fact, the president himself called Jack 100% MAGA, and he's shown every sign of being that. He said it's his job to support the president of the United States. I think as governor, it's the job to support the people of New Jersey. I've taken on anyone and everyone, including powerful members of my own party, to fight for people here in New Jersey. Jack won't say one cross word about the president. Even when he froze Gateway Tunnel funding, Jack said that's not a New Jersey problem. Well, I beg to differ, as do the over 200,000 people a day that ride that rail system into that tunnel, especially the people, too, that would get one of the almost 100,000 jobs in the region. That'll cost us $1 million a day, and yet Jack can't stand up to it. He's even said that New Jerseyans should take on a little bit of pain for Trump's tariffs. I don't think so. I actually think we should fight those tariffs, and as governor, I'd join the lawsuit to do just that.
Mr. Ciattarelli?
You know, it's interesting. When the pandemic came, our governor, Phil Murphy, who never had anything nice to say about Donald Trump, went down to the White House, had a very nice conversation with him, and got the respirators we needed because our ERs were on overload and people were dying. It's important to have a relationship. And a relationship means respectfully disagreeing when you believe the president's wrong and agreeing to get things done on behalf of New Jersey. One thing that I will do, because New Jersey's been a donor state for decades, is I will harness the energy of our congressional delegation and bring more money back to New Jersey.
We've got a follow-up for both of you, and you'll each have about 15 seconds to answer. And we'll start with you, Mr. Ciattarelli. What grade would you give President Trump for his second term?
Right now, I'd certainly give the president an A. I think he's right about everything that he's doing. He has secured the border and the economy. We've got inflation is much lower than it was when Joe Biden was in the White House, and particularly because of what he's done specific to New Jersey. Temporary halt on the wind farms, beating up on New York Democrats over the Gateway, over congestion pricing plan, and quadrupling the SALT deduction.
Congresswoman.
Amazing. I think that tells us all we need to know about who Jack Ciattarelli is supporting. I'd give him an F. Right now, we see at every single level, costs are going up on New Jerseyans. So whether it's the tariff costs that are costing you more from everything from a cup of coffee to the groceries you buy for dinner at night to the one big beautiful bill, which will raise health care, energy, and housing costs.
While we're giving grades, we're going to continue it, I think, with 30 seconds to answer. Congresswoman, what grade would you give to Governor Murphy?
I'd give him a B. There's things like paying for the pensions, the 9 increases in our credit rating that I like, but overall I think there's ways Trenton could do a lot better, being much more responsive to people. I'm going to have a culture shift in Trenton. I'm going to make sure that we have more accountability in government, driving down costs for people. I also think with the housing crisis, there's more we need to do to build houses, transit-oriented development, to make sure we can drive those costs down. And then our rail system. I'd fight harder for more infrastructure to make sure more people can get around the state easily.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
Bill, it's an F. This has been the worst governorship of our lifetime. And the reason why a number of Democrats all around the state have endorsed my candidacy is because they're fearful of another 4 years of Phil Murphy's policy failures. Take a look at what's happened in New Jersey. We have an affordability crisis because of property taxes, electricity rate, housing, and child care. We have a public education crisis because we watered down the public school curriculum. We have a public safety crisis because we don't let our local police do their jobs. And we have an overdevelopment crisis in our suburban communities because of high-density housing. It's been a failure across the board, and we need change.
Okay. Thank you.
I believe.
Is it to me?
Yes.
Okay. Number 5, Congressman Sherrill.
No, you're right, Bill. It was me.
But I'll take it anytime you want.
No,
It's okay.
I love this question. Congresswoman, we are in a government shutdown. Democrats say this is to protect against Medicare cuts and rising premiums. Republicans argue you should fund the government and deal with everything else in negotiations. Why is a shutdown with workers furloughed and programs stopped better than doing that?
So I think we've seen at every level cuts to affordability for working people. So we've seen these tariff cuts, we've seen these healthcare costs, we've seen hikes on utility costs as we go forward with the One Big Beautiful Bill. And now they've taken away healthcare in the One Big Beautiful Bill for millions of people, and they now want to cut healthcare support for people who still have it with the markets, the Affordable Care Act markets. That's what we're fighting for. And so right now with the president, with the Senate, and the House, all in GOP hands, the fact is they've got to work to reopen government so workers can get back to work and we can continue to drive down healthcare costs.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
Work to reopen government? When there were shutdowns during the Biden era, she voted every time for the continuing resolution to keep government, get it open again. This time around, with Trump in the White House, she's voted no on the resolutions to keep government open. I hope the shutdown ends within moments. I hope it ends tomorrow. We've got 22,000 New Jerseyans that are being furloughed because of the shutdown. But this is what happens in Washington, D.C. The job of a governor is to get things done. I have relationships with people in the legislature. We'll be able to work together to get things done. I've heard a number of times already tonight that President Trump seems to be responsible for everything that's wrong in New Jersey. I don't know what he has to do with our property taxes. I don't know what he has to do with our electricity rates, the failure of our public school system, the failure of our public safety across New Jersey with handcuffing our police, the failure of overdeveloping our suburbs. He doesn't have anything to do with all those things. So as I often like to say on the campaign trail, if you get a flat tire tomorrow, get ready. She's going to blame it on President Trump.
I know he likes to excuse President Trump from everything because that's who he works for, basically. But here are the facts. 1 in 3 children are on Medicaid. Well, there's going to be about a $5 billion hole in the budget because of Trump's cuts to Medicaid. He's cut off funding for some of our innovative power as we're facing utility crisis. It's going to drive up costs for families by hundreds of dollars. He's just taking away Title I funding for our schools, driving up our taxpayer rates. So that's why I'm fighting that. But make no mistake, I'll also fight Trenton to bring down costs for families.
Okay, thank you both very much. We're going to take a question from one of our media partners. It's for Mr. Ciattarelli, and you'll have a chance to come back afterwards. This is from Univision. Here's Ana Patricia Camdiana.
Mr. Ciattarelli, in our recent Univision town hall, you spoke about a path to recognition for undocumented immigrants. What exactly do you mean? Are you referring to a path to citizenship?
I support the president in securing the border. I believe it was a matter of national security. I think it's my role as governor to keep the state safe, and we'll do that on day one by not having sanctuary cities in our state, nor will we be a sanctuary state. I've been very, very transparent about that. I think that only encourages illegal immigration, and it does restrict our local police in certain ways. And if a local mayor and police chief want to work in partnership with a federal agency to keep their community safe, I think they should be allowed to do so. Having said that, anyone who came here from a history of criminality, came here illegally, came from a history of criminality in their country of origin, has to go back. Anyone who came here illegally and has committed crime or has scammed our government assistance program since coming here has to go back. I believe that everyone else should be put on a pathway to recognition. This has always been my position. And so a pathway to recognition means some form of government-issued ID, so we don't have people living in the shadows or working under a falsified Social Security number, which isn't fair to those who do that. So the answer to the very specific answer to her question is a pathway to recognition.
That's not really a real thing. That doesn't confer any status to anyone. So that's why, standing up here, I'm incredibly concerned about public safety. I'm a former federal prosecutor. I'm the only person on the stage who's prosecuted a violent criminal who was then deported. So I care deeply about that. But I've always been for comprehensive immigration reform, as have many people. We got very close, even with some very conservative members of the Senate. And that involves securing our borders, creating a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients, TPS recipients, people who are working and paying taxes. Having that pathway could be so helpful to our economy. So that's a very clear answer to this. I think Jack works to say anything he can to anyone, but at the end of the day, he's always going to do what Trump tells him to do.
30 seconds? Mm-hmm. The Congresswoman has been anything but strong when it comes to public safety. In Congress, she voted to get rid of qualified immunity. This is the bedrock of protection for local law enforcement. She has said that she is considered reappointing the current Attorney General, who's considered to be the most anti-police Attorney General we've ever had. She's given some kind of weird endorsement of Mondami. Mondami has endorsed her. I called on her to renounce that endorsement. Josh Shapiro, the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, has denounced Mondami, as has the congressman in the north. And this is somebody who's been also anti-police. We want our community safe. We need a governor, an attorney general, 21 county prosecutors, and a superintendent of state police who will keep our community safe.
The next question goes to you, Congresswoman Sherrill. Political tensions are at a high, and there are true fears in the public about political violence. We recently saw the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and in this state in 2020, a judge's son was killed in a political attack. Are there concrete things that you can do to help bring people together without fear?
Yeah, that was horrific. That's a judge I practiced before, and we worked incredibly hard at the federal level to get Daniel's Law so that we could actually get resources into the federal judges to keep them safe. But we've seen a continued uptick in political violence, and that is never acceptable. It really undermines, I think, our democracy and the idea that people want to come forward and serve. And I worry very much that with this kind of political violence, we are going to see people trying to step away from public life. So here in New Jersey, as governor, I will always work to make sure everyone is safe, to ensure that people can speak freely and yet not face political violence. I've worked at every level to do just that, whether it's on college campuses, with our presidents of universities to ask how they're keeping students safe there. I've also worked throughout the state to make sure that in our district, we are listening to all voices. I've heard from people on all different sides of the issue. They are always welcome to have discussions with my office.
Mr. Ciattarelli?
Since the time that the Congresswoman has declared for governor, she's missed 90% of the votes in Washington. But a few Fridays ago, she skipped out of two very important joint appearances in New Jersey to get to Washington, D.C. to vote yes on the Charlie Kirk resolution celebrating his life. I applaud her yes on that vote. When she came back to New Jersey and caught hell from the left, she issued a statement condemning Charlie Kirk, calling him a misogynist and a racist. The two things are inconsistent to me. The way to tamp down the hateful rhetoric is by having the right kind of leadership in place. I've always conducted myself in a respectful way, even when I disagree with people. I'm never going to tarnish the name my parents gave me, and I'm never going to embarrass my 4 children. I've always been respectful with my rhetoric, and I think that that's more important than ever. New Jersey is the most diverse state in the country. I think there's power and beauty in that diversity when we embrace it. I embrace it. Anyone who follows me on social media sees everywhere I go, and I mean everywhere, because we're all in this together, and I will represent all 9.3 million New Jersey citizens.
Congresswoman, just very briefly, do you want to respond to that in 15 seconds, if you could?
I do. So that resolution was a resolution standing up for free speech, and standing against political violence. And I do feel very strongly about that. I also feel very strongly that despite the fact that Charlie Kirk had a right to say a lot of things, I deeply disagreed with them. In fact, when I asked my opponent if he could disagree with Charlie Kirk saying Martin Luther King was a bad guy or that women should be subservient to their husbands, he could not. So I think it's my right to speak out as well against things that I disagree with.
Okay, thank you very much. We want to get to this next question. As we've all seen, there is no shortage of problems on New Jersey transit, no shortage at all. And in the past week, we have seen, and it was mentioned today, that the Trump administration stopped funding and thereby delaying construction of the uber-important Gateway to connect a third tunnel between New Jersey and New York City, a crucial tunnel. What's your response to that? We'll start with Mr. Ciattarelli.
So the bad news is there's a shutdown right now. I hope that it ends any moment, if not tomorrow. The good news with regard to the Gateway project, which is critically important and a quintessential governmental infrastructure program, is that the Gateway Commission is what funds that project. And then the Gateway Commission seeks reimbursement from the federal government for their end of the deal. The construction is not stopping. This shutdown would have to go on for 2 or 3 months before the Gateway project would grind to a halt. We have to fix New Jersey transit. And I'm proposing something you've seen in other states. Put all of our mass transit systems under one roof. The Garden State Transportation Authority. Atlantic City Expressway produces revenue with its tolls. Parkway and Turnpike produce revenue with its tolls. New Jersey Transit produces revenue with its fares. Put it all under one roof, one management structure, better accountability, better transparency. I'll fill in the blanks with the subsidy from state government, our state budget. That's the dedicated revenue stream to fix New Jersey Transit.
Congresswoman, your response.
So this is not tied to the shutdown. This is simply the president saying he's freezing the Gateway Tunnel funds, which he should not be able to do. And in my administration, I take him to court over it because those are congressionally appropriated funds for the Gateway Tunnel. I know this because I fought tooth and nail to get those funds in place. And so for my opponent to sort of brush off that these funds are frozen, these funds that, as I stated, can lead to about 100,000 jobs, that when we run out of money will cost us $1 million a day. We already have shovels in the ground. We are already moving forward on this. Our communities have gone through summer of hell after summer of hell after summer of hell. How do I know? Because my husband Jason takes the tunnel, and he has had trouble getting home from work, had to call me to go pick up our kids somewhere, or because he was going to miss an event that we had. So again and again, this is impacting people's lives. It's impacting their ability to get to work, and that is why I will constantly make sure that we are addressing our transportation needs here in New Jersey and taking care of the New Jersey commuter.
You have 30 seconds, sir.
You'll hear generalities and platitudes. The specific question was regard to New Jersey Transit. Here's what we need to do. Every single train and bus line needs to be reevaluated for ridership. If there isn't adequate ridership on every one of those lines, we have a tough decision to make. I do think we should dedicate our limited resources to those lines that provide the greatest value to the greatest number of commuters. It's time for that kind of reevaluation, but we need a new management structure. This administration, which he has supported through and through, had 8 years to fix it. They failed.
If I may, because my opponent likes to put out misinformation, the specific question was about the Gateway Tunnel project, which you failed to answer.
I thought it was New Jersey Transit in part as well.
I brought that up just officially. I have my thing right here. We talked about it, but I said, Mr. Trump, stop the funding about this tunnel.
And I did answer that. Okay. The Gateway Commission gets reimbursed by the federal government for the continuation of that. You would need a shutdown for 2 or 3 months before the shovels stop working.
This doesn't have to do with the shutdown. This is the president freezing those funds inappropriately.
It's a negotiation that's taking place with the Congress.
With the people of New Jersey and their commuting at state.
There's a negotiation that's taking place with the Congress.
I think the two of you have stated your positions and you're not changing. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back in just a minute.
Welcome back. You ready for the second round? All right. We're going to just switch gears a little bit and give you kind of a quick talk. We're going to make it very quick, if like 15 seconds on each one, 30 seconds max, it would be great. And it would take a different turn than some of the other questions. You are each people who have several children each, 4 each, as I understand it, right? Okay. As a parent, we're both parents. Mm-hmm. Most of the people here are parents. What are the things that make you most afraid, given everything that's happening in this country right now? Congressman, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I have 3 teenagers and a 20-year-old. And so I'm incredibly concerned about the world we're leaving to them, about their ability to all move back to New Jersey. I'm really concerned about the mental health of children right now. It's why I'm going to pass the Kids Online Safety Act as governor. It's why I'm going to drive more mental health resources into our kids' schools. Right now, you speak to parents, you speak to psychologists, and you hear again and again that we are facing a mental health crisis in our kids. And I want to make sure we address that. I'm also worried about our schools here in New Jersey. 3rd grade reading is not where it should be. And we know that's a key inflection point. That's how we know if people can move on to their social studies and history and math homework. So we're going to do phonics education. That's the best type of education to make sure kids are reading at appropriate grade level.
The mental health crisis, for sure. When I was a Somerset County freeholder, we created a community mental health center so people can have easy, convenient access to high quality care. I want to work with our 21 counties of government to do the exact same thing in all 21 counties. I too am very, very concerned about the public education system. We've got school districts where 80% of the kids are not on grade level for reading, writing, and math. Who has school choice? People with money. People with money can send their kids to private school. People without money do not have school choice. So if their school system is failing, I will provide them choice. My opponent will not. Voucher system like we've seen in Arizona, Ohio, and Florida. Charter schools, they've been very successful here in New Jersey, but only one has been approved in 8 years' time. We need to provide educational choice where districts are failing, and we need to employ a high-impact curriculum like we've seen in places like Louisiana and Mississippi. A high-impact curriculum, if your child is behind grade level in reading, writing, math, they'll spend the entire next marking period doing nothing other than reading, writing, and math.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you.
We're going to continue on, and we're going to go to Congresswoman Sherrill. We've seen the president move to deploy the National Guard in other states. If the president were to order the National Guard into a New Jersey city, how would you evaluate the move, and are there circumstances under which you would support it?
You know, unless there is an insurrection or some sort of crisis where the National Guard could come in and the president invokes the Insurrection Act, he's moving these National Guard troops across the country illegally, against the Insurrection Act, against Posse Comitatus. And I can tell you this because I've both worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office with law enforcement to keep people safe, and I've also worked in the military. And those are 2 very different jobs. And military members should not be on our streets. It makes people less safe. It makes people feel less safe. So I have to say, when you look at this across the country, and when you look at the threats, and then you see the president saying when he was with Hegseth recently that he's going to use our U.S. cities as training grounds for our military, that is unacceptable. I will not stand for that as governor.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
Tam, I've told the president and the people of New Jersey they'll never have to worry about New Jersey because as governor, we'll have safe communities, and here's why. I appoint the Attorney General. I appoint the 21 county prosecutors. I appoint the superintendent of the state police, and we're going to be a law and order state again. We do that by not having sanctuary cities, and we do that by reforming bail reform. Cashless bail has created a professional criminal in New Jersey who's learned how to game the system. Talk to your local police about arrest, release, repeal. My opponent has not said a word about getting rid of sanctuary cities, the Immigrant Trust Directive. She's not said a word about reforming bail reform. Yet cops will tell you all the time that this is one of the things getting in the way of keeping our communities safe. So again, the president won't have to worry about these things in New Jersey. My Attorney General, the head law enforcement officer, the 21 county prosecutors that report to that Attorney General, and it's all the police chiefs that report to those county prosecutors, we will be a law and order state again, and there will be a consequence for unruly, unlawful behavior.
30 seconds.
You know, I'm the only one who's actually worked closely with law enforcement, prosecuting cases to keep dangerous people off the streets. I'm very proud of my record there. And I continue to push forward in that work. So I've worked with all of the police chiefs in my district on our auto thefts to make sure we had license plate readers, federally funded, so we could drive down the rash of auto theft. So again and again and again, I've worked on public safety, but he misunderstands what's going on in this country if he thinks these National Guard troops are being positioned in the most dangerous cities. They're not.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
May I?
30 seconds.
What I'm worried about is what I can control. What I can control is public safety in New Jersey. She worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office as a community organizer. Then she worked for the New Jersey U.S. Attorney for 11 months and pled most of her cases, pleading cases with people who were let go for a number of different things, some of them very heinous crimes. So I doubt very much whether this is somebody who can stand here and say that she's tough on crime. But the fact that she voted to get rid of qualified immunity for local police, which is the bedrock of their protection, and the fact that she's did this dance with Mandami, she's not about public safety.
Would you like 30 seconds to respond?
Yeah, so, my opponent denigrates public service at every turn. He said law enforcement shouldn't get the pay they get because there's a lot more dangerous jobs out there where people make less. He's voted against our pension system in the past. Again and again, he puts down people who serve the public. I'm proud of my service at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm proud of my service in the U.S. military, and I'm proud of people who serve, and as governor, I'm going to make sure I have their backs.
Mr. Ciattarelli, you get the next question. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the national unemployment rate is a little bit over 4%, but in New Jersey, it's around 5%. Adding to the uncertainty around hiring are concerns about tariffs, inflation, and AI. How will you get around this environment to bring jobs to New Jersey?
Tam, we have always lagged the national average when it comes to unemployment because we're always ranked 48th, 49th, or 50th in the country as one of the worst places in the country to do business. The current administration is trying to tax its way out of fiscal calamity in Trenton. I'm going to responsibly reduce the size and cost of state government to afford a tax cut for individuals and our businesses. But make no mistake, you can't cut your way out. We've got to grow the economy. And I'm going to grow the economy by making New Jersey a better place to do business. That means lowering the highest business tax in the nation, lessening regulations without screwing the consumer, residents, or doing irreparable harm to the environment, making sure there's an ample labor pool because of a dynamic relationship in my government between the Department of Labor, Department of Education, and getting electricity rates down. If the president is successful, and I hope that he is, in bringing manufacturing back as one example of blue-collar, middle-class jobs, they're not coming to New Jersey as long as we have the highest property taxes in the nation, the highest electricity rates. I'll make New Jersey a better place to do business, grow the economy, create jobs, and get that unemployment number down.
Congresswoman.
My opponent likes to talk a lot about being a businessman, but I think what New Jersey doesn't know is much about his business, how he made his millions, by working with some of the worst offenders and saying that opioids were safe, putting out propaganda, publishing their propaganda, while tens of thousands of New Jerseyans died. And as if that wasn't enough, then he was paid to develop an app so that people who were addicted could more easily get access to opioids. And so as he made millions, as these opioid companies made billions, tens of thousands of New Jerseyans died.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
First of all, shame on you. Second of all,
shame on you, sir.
Shame on you. During the Biden administration, she had no problem whatsoever with tens of thousands of people crashing our border each and every day, not knowing what impact they had in our communities with regard to fentanyl crisis, fentanyl abuse, fentanyl distribution, vaccination rates, and the like. Talk to your local police, talk to your county prosecutors in New Jersey. Since the border's been secured, fentanyl crisis has decreased significantly. She supported those open border policies. But with regard to everything she just said about my professional career, which provided my family, it's a lie. I'm proud of my career.
You get 30 seconds.
I'm happy to publish the information. And here are the
sure
facts.
You are.
I work because I think our kids deserve better. Mm-hmm. I think the people you got addicted and died deserve better than you. And I'll tell you, tens of thousands here as you published misinformation, as you got more people addicted, as you worked to develop, got paid to develop an app so that more people could get more opioids and die.
I got to walk at my college graduation.
I
got to walk at my college graduation.
And I'm so glad that you then went on to kill tens of thousands of people in New Jersey, including children,
and I never broke the law.
They got. You just broke the law. In fact, your campaign right now is under federal investigation for how you illegally got access to my records. So to say that right now, and I think you're trying to divert from the fact that you killed tens of thousands of people by printing your misinformation, your propaganda, and then getting paid to develop an app so that people could more easily get the opioids once they were addicted. Families across the state deserve to know more about that.
Mr. Ciattarelli, you get 15 seconds.
The difference between me and the Congresswoman, I got to walk at my college graduation. I've never broken the law. She had to pay federal fines for breaking federal law on stock trades and stock reporting, and the New York Times reports was trading defense stocks while sitting on the House Armed Services Committee.
I think you get 15 seconds now.
This is the same old misinformation that he continues to promote because he knows that I don't trade in individual stocks. He knows I've gone above and beyond that. He also knows he promotes some garbage number, but he actually knows so much about my finances because they're all to the dollar. But here's the other thing. What he never learned, despite walking at his graduation, was accountability, integrity, care for the community. And I think that disqualifies him.
Tam,
thank you both.
She released 2 years of tax returns the years after she paid the federal fines. I've released 12 years
yours
going
a
back
minute
every
before the
single
last
year.
debate because you knew I was going to call you on it.
Let's move on to some of the interesting,
getting desperate.
Some of the issues that the people in New Jersey are thinking about, and we're going to switch it pretty drastically here. Both of you have been critical about the high cost of electricity in New Jersey. I would like you to tell us specifically, and all the viewers watching, how you would lower prices and perhaps bring in sources of alternative energy, which I think, based on my business days, business school days, we could increase supply and lower prices that way. Ms. Sherrill, please start it off.
Sure. So, you know, we have an alphabet soup of agencies in this state who have kicked the can down the road and then dumped the extra cost on the ratepayer, which is why on day one of my administration, I'm going to declare a state of emergency on utility costs and freeze rate hikes. I know my opponent laughs at it and doesn't actually want to address the utility crisis or the families that are suffering, but on my watch, I am stopping this. This is not acceptable. I'm going to drive in an energy arsenal of power as we drive costs down over time, making sure we build out our solar, our battery storage, improve our gas generation in the state, and then develop nuclear power. We need to make sure we produce here because let's face it, the PJM market, which he's called some small nonprofit, while numerous bipartisan governors across our region are demanding better, our market is screwed up and it's driving up cost here. So if we produce it here at home, we can drive down those energy costs.
Okay, sir.
77 incumbent Democratic legislators, many of which have been in the legislature for a long time, 52 of which are on the ballot this year. Not a single one has endorsed her plan. Not a single one has embraced it. Governor of her own party went on TV and said, I don't think you can do that. It's an illegit plan and it's not feasible. Let's talk about, since we have seconds here, how we got to this point. Phil Murphy shut down 6 different electricity generation plants, put a moratorium on natural gas-fired electricity generation, didn't expand nuclear in South Jersey, and didn't accelerate solar on the rooftops of all the warehouses that have gone up, which is prime real estate for solar arrays. The DEP slows down the permitting process every single time. Here's what I'll do as governor. We've already talked about pulling out of RGGI. Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative has been a failed policy. Electricity is more expensive, air's no cleaner. We can save $300 to $500 million a year. That's real. I will reopen and repurpose the plants that were shut down. I will lift the moratorium on natural gas-fired electricity generation. I'll expand nuclear in South Jersey and accelerate solar on the rooftops of warehouses.
So Politico just recently called him out for his misinformation, saying it was on his watch that many of these things were shut down, including a nuclear power plant. And so I will tell you, if you want the same old, if you want the failed policies of old, you can vote for Jack Ciattarelli. But if you really want to see your energy costs go down, if you want to see innovation, if you want to see new ideas against the status quo, then I ask for you to vote for me.
Mr. Ciattarelli, next question. Do you support enshrining the right to an abortion in the state constitution as your opponent does?
I've always supported a woman's right to choose, and I said yes to that question back in 2021. What I don't support is celebrating abortion the way the current administration does. What I don't support is making New Jersey the abortion capital of the country, inviting other people from other states to come to New Jersey and have their abortions performed. I don't support that, let alone use taxpayer dollars to do that. I also support something that my opponent does not, parental notification. In the state of New Jersey, you can't get your ears pierced under the age of 18 without the permission of your parents. But we're not going to notify parents when a 16 or 17-year-old is having an abortion performed? I think that's terribly wrong. I've yet to find the most liberal, maybe with one exception, of women across the state who support that policy. So that's where my position has always been on abortion. I've supported a woman's right to choose.
Congresswoman.
So again, he's peddling misinformation. You know, I don't think he knows what's going on in the state, or he's willfully ignoring it, or in this country. You know, we're hearing stories across the country about horrible outcomes, like Portia, a woman in Texas, who went to the emergency room as she was miscarrying, 2 young children at home. As she was miscarrying, they gave her multiple transfusions, but because of abortion bans like the one my opponent's proposing, the doctors were afraid to give her a DNC or an abortion to save her life. So she died in an emergency room, purely preventable, could have been taken care of. But when you put in place things like my opponent has suggested, people die. We also have the fact that when he was last in office, he voted to defund Planned Parenthood. So these are not pro-choice positions. I know he's getting up here to tell everyone what they want to hear right now as he desperately tries for the 3rd time to become the next governor of New Jersey, but this is not credible. Abortion bans, defunding Planned Parenthood, those are not a pro-choice position.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
We're not Texas. Any woman whose pregnancy is in trouble, whose health is at stake, they will be able to have their abortion performed safely by competent clinicians to protect the woman's health. We are not Texas. With regard to Planned Parenthood, the question I've always asked the Democrats in the Trenton is, why is it they get 100% of the money? Why is it we don't send any of the money to pregnancy resource centers like Lighthouse in Bergen County, for example? I don't think that's fair. Let's distribute the money equitably.
And it's time now to go to another question from our media partner, Univision. This one will go to Congresswoman Sherrill. And here again, once again, is Anna Patricia Candiani.
Congresswoman Sherrill, New Jersey's all water pipes are failing, causing frequent water main breaks and sinkholes in our communities. Fixing the issue is estimated to cost $24 billion over 20 years. Can you commit to fix this problem, and how would you fund it?
Yeah, so we have had water main problems throughout New Jersey, and I've worked to drive funding into it. We need a combination of federal and state funding to address these breaks. While I've been in Congress, I addressed the lead pipe remediation in Nutley and Belleville, making sure that we had safer pipes. And we've seen we have some of the oldest water infrastructure in the nation, which is why it's critical we replace it, but very expensive, which is why working with the delegation, our federal delegation, to drive in federal resources to this is going to be the best way to remediate the problem, but also continue to drive down costs for New Jersey families.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
I'd like to get back to the 3 pillars of all state governments in all 50 states. It was always about public safety and education, public safety, if you will, public health and safety rather, public education and infrastructure. And here in the state of New Jersey, our infrastructure is in demand. We saw it recently with a major pipe break in Patterson with a 100-year-old pipe. I was there, the current governor wasn't, my opponent wasn't, but I was there to talk to the businesses and residents who were without fresh water for 2 or 3 weeks. This also represents a magnificent jobs program in terms of improving our infrastructure all around the state. And so this is the kind of thing that gets me very excited about being governor. Not only improving a critical infrastructure program, but creating jobs along the way. We have to do it. We have pipes that are now 100 years old. In some cities, we have pipes that are delivered, they're wooden pipes that are delivering the water. I also want to have conversations with those municipalities that have their own water utility. I think it's time for them to have a serious conversation with selling that to the water companies who have the capitalization to improve the infrastructure.
Congresswoman Sherrill.
So again, I think infrastructure is such a key thing, and that's why I've fought for it since the minute I've been in Congress. Water infrastructure, our rail infrastructure, making sure we have better buses across the state. And at every turn, my opponent's turning a blind eye when we see cuts to this infrastructure from the federal government. So the recent freezing of the Gateway Tunnel funds by Donald Trump that my opponent said wasn't a New Jersey problem is just the latest example.
Okay. We're going to move on to another subject. We're going to talk about schooling. We're going to start with Mr. Ciattarelli. We all know that all of our futures depend, all of them, on the education that young people are getting. How do we level the playing field and fix schools in New Jersey, especially those in lower performing districts, so all kids who are the future of all of us, get a top-notch education? Sir?
So, Bill, in the post-pandemic world here in New Jersey, we have not compensated for all the learning loss that took place because the governor shut down the schools for 2 years. Think about this for a second. He opened up the nursing homes, where we led the nation in nursing home deaths, but closed the schools for 2 years. And we haven't compensated for all that learning loss. Here's what I've said all along. We've slipped from 2 to 12 on the national report card. You're never going to hear me say something my opponent likes to say often. We've got the best school system in the country. We do not. You take out the top 10% performers, which skew the results, it's a whole different story. 50% of the incoming freshmen at every one of our 19 community colleges, are taking remedial courses that don't even qualify for college credit. We need to do what Mississippi and Louisiana did, high impact curriculum. If your child is behind grade level, that's all we're going to focus on, the critical life skills until they are. But I'm also going to provide school choice. My opponent will not, because she's owned by the teachers union, who does not want school choice. No vouchers, no charter schools. I will provide educational choice.
Congresswoman?
You know, I think it's interesting how he keeps citing places like Louisiana and Mississippi. I think some of the worst schools in the entire nation. If that's where he wants to drive us to, I think voters better be aware of that. Because I'm going to make sure that we are driving in better results for our kids. And so one of the few things my opponent and I seem to agree on is learning loss is a huge issue. The difference is, as he's been a perennial gubernatorial candidate, I've been actually working to address that. It's why I put in place high-intensity tutoring, a federal bill. I've worked with the state legislators so we could do it at the state level as well. Make sure we're addressing learning loss. Ensuring we are addressing third grade reading. As governor, I'm going to make sure we're teaching phonics to our teachers. That is the best way to help students learn reading, and I've discussed how important that is. Driving in better mental health resources to our students and passing the Kids Online Safety Act, which is going to help all of our students have a better experience, better mental health, and better outcomes.
Sir? I'm going to repeat something I said earlier in the evening because I think it's one of the things that differentiates the two of us very, very much. But also reveals one of the hypocrisies of the Democratic Party that wants to portray itself as the party of the marginalized, disadvantaged, and minorities. Who has school choice? People with money. They can pull their children out because they have the wherewithal to send them to private school. Who doesn't have school choice? Particularly in failing school districts. People without the money. I'll provide them choice with vouchers and charter schools. My opponent will not.
We're running out of some time, but we're going to make up for it right now. We're going to move to 30-second response to this. Mr. Ciattarelli, we'll start with you. When he was elected president last year, Donald Trump gave a speech saying he would ensure freedom of speech to Americans. Forward to 9 months later, many Americans, many of whom live in New Jersey, are questioning whether freedom of speech is now shrinking in this country or even getting taken away. What would you say to those people who worry about this?
Number one, I can't control what other people say. Number two, I won't be afraid to step up from the people in New Jersey every day of the week if something is taking place that disadvantages them in any way, including their constitutional rights, and there will be free speech here in the state of New Jersey. I appoint the Attorney General, I appoint the county prosecutors, I appoint the Superior Court judges. We'll have a law enforcement community and a judiciary that respects people's constitutional rights every day of the week.
Congresswoman.
So I've taken numerous oaths to the Constitution my whole life and fought for those values enshrined in it. I will always protect free speech in this state. I do worry that there are rollbacks going on, and I actually worry very much about something my opponent just said, that he'll appoint the Supreme Court judges. I think there's 2 upcoming judges, and my opponent has said he's going to remake our New Jersey court like Trump remade the Supreme Court.
That's a lie.
I think everyone who's worried about free speech should be very worried about my opponent being in office to appoint judges.
15 seconds.
I've never said that. What I've said is that I will appoint Supreme Court justices that agree with me on issues like high-density housing in suburban districts where there's no infrastructure, and who agree with me on school funding. I've never said what she just said I said. It's another lie.
All right, we're going to take a little turn. We're almost to your closings. 15 seconds on each of these, a little bit more fun. And this one will be interesting. We'll start with you, Congresswoman Sherrill. What is something you appreciate about your opponent?
So I really appreciate that his son is serving.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
I appreciate her military service.
Anything else?
Yes, anything else? Okay, we'll move on. Congresswoman Sherrill, what is your favorite place in New Jersey?
Montclair. It's where my home is. It's where I've raised my kids.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
Raritan, New Jersey, Somerset County, where my grandparents immigrated 100 years ago.
What is something about you, Ms. Sherrill, that most voters do not know?
Oh, let's see. I think my favorite things, and I've learned this over time, is going to my kids' sports games. I used to dread it, but now I really do enjoy that.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
Getting up Sunday morning and making the gravy. And I want to be transparent, Tam. It's gravy, not sauce. It's macaroni, not pasta. But the meatballs, the braciole, and the sausage will be in the pot, and we'll have a Sunday dinner together.
And finally, do you support, Congresswoman Sherrill, a lot of pump your own gas?
No, I really enjoy, I've come into New Jersey on fumes from Delaware, especially when my kids were little and in the rain, so I think a lot of people really love our state laws as they are.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
We have too many dubious distinctions, Tam, and I'll fix a great many of those, but one of our special differences here in New Jersey, we don't have to pump our own gas. Jersey girls don't like to pump their own gas. We'll continue to have full service.
What is the thing that you think you'd like to have to be the top brass in this state? What do you want to do the first day you're in office that no one's thinking about? Start with you.
I want to join the court case against the tariffs that the president's implementing right now. That's one of the #1 things I hear about as I speak to thousands of New Jerseyans, is how these tariff costs are raising everything from a cup of coffee to the groceries they buy to make dinner at night.
Sir?
Lower your energy costs on day one with Executive Order number 3. We're pulling out of RGGI. The Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative is a carbon tax policy that has failed New Jersey.
Both of you, thank you for those answers and what's happened in the last 55 minutes. We now have reached the end of our debate time, and it's time for each candidate's closing statements. The candidates will each have 1 minute for their closing statements, and we're going to begin with Congresswoman Sherrill.
Thank you. Shipmate, self. It's a saying in the Navy. It means the mission comes first. It means the sailors come second, and as a leader, you come last. That's the kind of governor I'll be. And you know, the ship is New Jersey. Our mission to drive down costs for families. And I will be a leader who serves everyone, no matter who you are, where you live, or who you voted for. And as I've gone around the state, spoken to thousands of our neighbors, I've heard again and again, we want a great state where we can raise our families. We want our kids to have a shot. We want to make sure we're safe and healthy. And so that's the kind of governor I'm going to be. Those are the things I'm going to work on. And I have to tell you, I know too many people think it's too hard right now. But I believe, despite the chaos, despite the challenges, we can be better. We can do better. And so if you vote for me as your governor, I would be incredibly honored, and I will work every single day to be worthy of that mission.
Mr. Ciattarelli.
My opponent has based her entire campaign on a stack of lies about me, her disdain for the president, and that's not going to fix New Jersey. What we need are solutions here in New Jersey. Her party has controlled the legislature for 25 years. They've had the executive branch for the last 8 years. Can anybody honestly say that things are better off today than back whenever? If you want change, you have to make a change. If my opponent is elected, nothing will change. It'll be more of the same, only worse. The Ciattarellis have been here for 100 years. 3 generations of Ciattarellis have all achieved their American dream right here in New Jersey. And so when I'm asked why am I running for governor, it's very simple. I want today's New Jerseyans and future generations of New Jerseyans to feel confident they can achieve their American dream here in New Jersey. We have an affordability crisis, a public education crisis, a public safety crisis, and an overdevelopment crisis in the state. And tonight, I put forth a plan. Very specific ideas, solutions, and policy proposals on how to fix New Jersey. I hope to have your vote.
You have both made your cases, and we thank you. We thank you for letting us do this part of it, and you made your points, and we appreciate that, both of you.
Thank you both.
Very good. Okay.
Thank you.
And that brings us with this, the end of our debate. We want to thank the candidates for taking part indeed. And we wish them good luck to both of you. And we thank you, the viewers. We thank you, the viewers, for thanking and being with us tonight. We hope tonight was hopeful when you make your decision about who you will vote to choose for the New Jersey's next governor.
I too want to thank both of you, thank all the viewers, voters out there who are watching. Thank Bill for being such a great co-moderator. And thank you as well to our partners, the Edward J. Blaustein School of Planning and Public Policy, the new Brunswick Performing Arts Center, and our media partner, Univision. I'm Tamala Edwards of 6ABC, WPVI in Philadelphia.
And I'm Bill Ritter of Channel 7 Eyewitness News, WABC-TV in New York. We encourage you to do what all Americans should be doing. Exercise your right to vote on Tuesday, November the 14th, or by early voting, which begins on October 25th. I have wanted to make sure I get that number. October 25th begins it for all of us here. And thank you for working with me today. It was really an honor. Thank you for watching. And we say to all of you, health and good night.
Good night.
is an Eyewitness News special presentation after the debate.
And you've been watching the final New Jersey gubernatorial debate here on Channel 7. The candidates had a back and forth on numerous issues, including the economy and affordability, education and crime, all top of mind for voters in the Garden State. Hello, I'm Sade Better-en-Moi.
Hey everybody, I'm Mike Marza. Thanks for joining us here as we break down what we just watched unfold. Our team of analysts standing by, Dr. Ashley Koning with Rutgers University and Micah Rasmussen from Rider University. Plus, ABC News political director Avery Harper will be live from D.C.
And we do expect to hear from the candidates shortly. When they start to speak, we will bring it to you. We will also hear from our moderators coming up. But let's get right to it.
What is your reaction to the debate? Who did what right? Who did what wrong?
Well, you know, what I like to start with is, did anybody do any harm to themselves? And I don't think so. I think nobody stumbled. Nobody had any one-liners that we're going to see go viral tomorrow or anything like that. So in a sense, they both got to dispatch their points. Clearly, I think that Jack Ciattarelli is somebody who's been running for 10 years. He's very polished in his answers. He knows what he wants to come and do. And so I think this plays to his strength in some ways. But I think the new ground, maybe, the little bit of new ground we saw, is that Mikie Sherrill, when he came after her on the Naval Academy record, she went right back on him on his medical publishing company and its role in the opioids crisis. And so that was a little new, although we've heard bits and pieces about it before. She did cover some new ground there.
Ashley?
Yeah, we went 40 minutes without a true scuffle, right, until then. And I think I agree, Micah, in terms of, we saw a very polished performance because Ciattarelli has been doing this for a while. And again, Sherrill kind of leading back on her records. I think what Ciattarelli may have done slightly differently this time around is he did lean into some of these kind of moderate Republican stances when he talked about abortion and reproductive issues, which is something appealing to New Jersey voters, especially when they choose Republican candidates. We saw similar things with Chris Christie Todd Whitman. So, that could give him some appeal with that key voting bloc of independents by moderating his answers on social issues that are very well accepted in the Garden State.
And Ashley and Micah, if you have not been following this race closely, you're hearing about an opioid situation, an app, and it was sort of confusing to the general audience, right. I feel like. There was a controversy with that he also dealt with back in 2021. Yeah. I want to bring in Avery Harper because she was watching this with us tonight. But before we have our discussion, Avery, let's play that moment where, as you mentioned, Ashley, it was about 40 minutes into this debate, the two went at it. Let's see how that played out.
You have 30 seconds, sir.
You'll hear generalities and platitudes. The specific question was regarding New Jersey Transit. Here's what we need to do.
If I may, because my opponent likes to put out misinformation, the specific question was about the Gateway Tunnel project, which you failed to answer.
I thought it was New Jersey Transit. You would need a shutdown for 2 or 3 months before the shovels stop working.
This doesn't have to do with the shutdown. This is the president freezing those funds inappropriately.
It's a negotiation that's taking place with the Congress.
With the people of New Jersey and their commuting at state.
There's a negotiation that's taking place with the Congress.
I think the two of you have stated your positions and you're not changing.
But with regard to everything she just said about my professional career, which provided my family, it's a lie. I'm proud of my career.
You get 30 seconds.
I'm happy to publish the information. And here are the
sure
facts.
You are.
I work because I think our kids deserve better. I think the people you got addicted and died deserve better than you. And I'll tell you, tens of thousands here as you published misinformation, as you got more people addicted, as you got paid to develop an app so that more people could get more opioids and die.
I got to walk at my college graduation. I got to walk at my college graduation.
And I'm so glad that you then went on to kill tens of thousands of people in New Jersey, including children,
and I never broke the law.
they got. You just broke the law. In fact, your campaign right now is under federal investigation for how you illegally got access to my records. So to say that right now, and I think you're trying to divert from the fact that you killed tens of thousands of people by printing your misinformation, your propaganda, and then getting paid to develop an app so that people could more easily get the opioids once they were addicted. Families across the state deserve to know more about that.
Mr. Ciattarelli, you get 15 seconds.
The difference between me and the Congresswoman, I got to walk at my college graduation. I've never broken the law. She had to pay federal fines for breaking federal law on stock trades and stock reporting. And the New York Times reports was trading defense stocks while sitting on the House Armed Services Committee.
I think you get 15 seconds now.
This is the same old misinformation that he continues to promote because.
So this was probably the sharpest moment of the night. Avery, who won that moment?
I have to say, I think it was Congresswoman Sherrill who won that moment. I have to say, my jaw hit the ground during that exchange because for Congresswoman Sherrill to bring up the medical publishing company, for her to tie that to the opioid crisis, there are so many New Jersey voters who have a friend or a relative or know someone who's been affected by the opioid crisis. And then for Jack Ciattarelli to shoot back with, well, I walked at my college graduation, the two are just not equivalent. And so if you are somebody who has some sort of tie to the opioid crisis, which is a very serious issue, Jack Ciattarelli's answer just did not land. And so I'm interested to see what the fallout from that exchange is going to be tomorrow.
Thank you. And Micah, what are we talking about here? He owned a medical publishing company, right. And the accusation is that that company was writing articles and information that downplayed the effects of the opioid crisis?
That's exactly right. One of the biggest clients was Purdue Pharmaceuticals, which we know played a big role in the opioid crisis. And as you just said, downplayed the risks, promoted the use of opioids to doctors and physicians to prescribe them, and that was how the medical publishing company made its money.
And Avery, you know, when we talk about just the overall tone of how the two got along, we heard at the end there, name something you like about the other one. They landed on military service, something that they could agree on. What do you make of their exchange tonight as you watched it unfold behind the podiums there?
I mean, I lost count at how many times both candidates spoke about President Donald Trump. And I think that just goes to show you how heavily national politics are weighing on this race. For Congresswoman Sherrill, we saw her over and over again try and tie Jack Ciattarelli, I think effectively, to the Trump administration and to the decisions that are being made by this administration in a way that Congresswoman Sherrill is hoping turns voters out to the polls for her when they start voting early and on Election Day.
You know, Avery, I'm also thinking about the letter grade that each of the candidates gave to the Trump administration, which we knew where they were going to lie. Sherrill gave them an F, Ciattarelli gave them an A. But was, you know, as we're talking about independence, was this also a missed opportunity for Ciattarelli? I mean, because clearly New Jersey bends blue. And, you know, was there an opportunity for him to kind of sort of play it more in the middle?
Yeah, I think that was a weak point in Ciattarelli's journey throughout the night by giving Trump the A and kind of having a somewhat of a weak reasoning for what he disagreed with the president with. I think independents in particular and those key voting blocks for Ciattarelli, they would probably want to see a stronger stand against the president that would fit with his overall strategy of being New Jersey first.
And Avery, what are your thoughts on that?
And I think that he has an understanding that Trump is the leader of this current Republican Party, and we've seen New Jersey shift right in the last presidential election. And so I think the last thing that Ciattarelli was going to do from that stage tonight was try to draw contrast between him and Trump because that influence is just paramount in this current Republican Party. I don't think that he wants to remind Republican voters, especially many who consider themselves a part of the MAGA movement, that he had differences with Trump back in the day, right? As earlier in his political career, he really wants to toe that line and continue to have the endorsement and the support of the President of the United States.
Avery Harper, we appreciate your perspective. We'll join you in just a few moments as we continue to break down what unfolded tonight.
That's right. Now we want to send it back out to the debate stage with Bill Ritter and Tamala Edwards. You guys were there in the room conducting this debate. What are your thoughts?
You know, first of all, I want to say I really liked hearing, and we're hearing our. Are you hearing?
I hear it,
yeah,
but we'll work through it.
We'll work through it. Yes. I wanted to keep hearing your guests talk about it. We were very much involved in all of it, and we have our own opinions about this. And we'll talk about them. But I'm really anxious to know what you guys thought about it was, and then we'll come back to us. Seriously, what did you think they got out of this?
Bill, we are now going to take Jack Ciattarelli, who is now speaking at the podium.
By a desperate campaign on behalf of a desperate candidate. It's a lie.
Do you hope that the president comes and campaigns for you in these final weeks?
What I'm happy about is the White House has said to us that they're happy to help us in any way that we think they can bring value to the campaign.
Do you hope maybe that's a rally, something like that?
We're looking at every opportunity to see what brings value to the campaign.
Mr. Ciattarelli, let's look a little bit
out of left field, but New Jersey has one of the highest populations of Venezuelan residents in the country. And the Trump administration is currently waging what seems like it could be a regime change operation in Venezuela. Is that something that in principle you're in favor of, even if it might result in an influx of family members or acquaintances of those Venezuelans to New Jersey?
I don't know enough about the issue to comment. All I'll say is we welcome as many illegal immigrants as possible in New Jersey.
And one more question for you.
Charlie?
Why are you opposed to a path to citizenship for long-settled immigrants?
I didn't say I was opposed. I said I favor a pathway to recognition. You can't have citizenship unless you have recognition. So let's have the first conversation. Who should be deported, who should not, and who should not? How do we put them on a pathway to recognition? And that includes a government-issued ID and a real Social Security number so that people aren't working under a falsified Social Security number.
Recognition would be an interim step to citizenship?
I wouldn't call it an interim step. I call it the first step.
What does it look like? What does a path to recognition look like?
A path to recognition? Yeah, recognizing your existence in the state the way we do when somebody comes here from a foreign country and gets a work visa.
So Congresswoman Sherrill said last month that you're afraid to support the release of the Epstein files because Donald Trump is in them. What is your response to that? Have you articulated a view on that issue?
I have a very consistent response to a great many things she says. It's a lie. I've said publicly, release the files. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Regarding this Wildwood rally on Friday, there are a few speakers there who will be appearing who have spread conspiracy theories. Are you worried that that might alienate some of the more moderate independent voters you're trying to court? And also, this rally is trying to re-energize and replicate the energy that Trump had last year. Do you think you do that without Trump at this event?
Two things. I can't control what other people say, and I think I'm judged by what it is that I say. And what I say is specific to the crises that has New Jerseyans, particularly the middle class, getting crushed every single day. Somebody was over here?
Yeah. On taxes, you have said that if you were governor, you would vow not to increase any of the current taxes. If you are to win the governorship.
When?
When? If that's how you want to do it. It's not an election, but
I'm just playing with you, man. Just playing with you.
we gotta have fun, right? So if and when you become governor, do you vow to commit that there'll be no new taxes in New Jersey if you are elected?
So it took us 238 years to go from zero to a $36 billion budget. And over 8 years, we went from $36 billion budget to a $59 billion budget, a 64% increase. I think this government's bloated. I think it's inefficient. I think it needs to be responsibly downsized, and I will, to afford a tax cut for businesses and individuals. The business tax rate and the individual income tax rates. And we're not raising any other taxes. Let me be very clear about that. As you know, at the last debate, when she was asked that question, she said, I'm not going to commit myself to anything, which is astonishing to me, considering, in fact, she's going around this state spending millions of dollars saying that I'm going to raise the sales tax to 10%. It's another one of those clips. Just because I'm talking about another state's tax policies doesn't mean I'm implementing their policies in New Jersey. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious, you mentioned that you would give Trump an A rating so far in this second term. I was wondering if you could outline any areas you feel like you would differ from the president on any of his positions.
Number one, I'm not real happy about the Empire Wind Farm off of Long Island. I hope that doesn't lead to wind farms being approved off of New Jersey. They do need not only state approval, but federal approval as well. I'm very thankful he's put a temporary halt on the wind farms off the Jersey Shore. And I also think that, when we're talking about things about the impact of acetaminophen on people, that we need to make sure that we've got medical science to prove those kinds of claims. Right here? Right here? Right here? Right here?
The Congresswoman said that you voted against the bill that will restrict the great business of parental rights, essentially. Could you talk a little bit about that vote?
There were Democrats that were off that bill, and it was so flawed it never even got out of the legislature, despite the fact that Democrats overwhelmingly have majorities in both houses. Okay, that's an area that I think judges should decide how best to handle those cases instead of creating a one-size-fits-all approach.
Mr. Sherrill, as you know, CBS News first reported that Congresswoman Sherrill's unredacted, mostly unredacted military records were released at the same time as her people reported that she did not want her graduation ceremony. Are those two incidents or those two reports connected in one way? Because the Congresswoman says it's as a result of those records that David Wildstein is going to.
She's tried to connect them to create a smokescreen. The National Archives fulfilled a Freedom of Information Act request that was perfectly legal. They took responsibility for the request of information they shouldn't have, and they apologized. What's on the other side of the ledger is the fact that this is a person who said she's the most transparent candidate and governor of all time and will not come clean on why it is she was punished by the Naval Academy. We know there was a cheating scandal. We know that she was involved, and we know that she was punished. She wasn't allowed to walk in the graduation. Her name is not listed in the commencement exercise program. She says it's because she didn't turn in her classmates. If that's true, then confirm it by approving the release of your disciplinary records. The fact that she won't release those records says that what she's saying, in my mind, is not true. I think something else went down there, and that's why she was punished.
On education, sir.
What does that mean? Okay, thank you, gang.
All right, so we've been listening to the Republican Jack Ciattarelli giving a news conference just moments after this debate. We expect to hear from the Democrat Mikie Sherrill in just a moment. Let's go back to New Brunswick and the moderators of tonight's debate, Tamala Edwards and our Bill Ritter. Bill, when we heard this exchange, and this really was the back and forth that they had with the opioid crisis sort of at the center, but a lot of other things were drawn into it, which is the military criticism, the record release and all of that. How did that play in the room to you two who were watching this just feet away as they were, I believe from the microphones we could hear shame, both saying shame to each other. Yeah. How did that play in the debate?
It was like that. My partner here was very clearly felt like this was out of nowhere, she thinks, against him. And he was really shocked, I think.
So what was a little surprising is there are moments that you think, okay, this question's really going to open up. That back and forth came after a question about a Bureau of Labor Statistics stat about it being harder to have jobs in New Jersey, and somehow it took a turn. And you could see Ciattarelli was surprised. I don't think he saw that coming. And this came after, Mike, as you pointed out, he had brought up some things about her military record. You know, it's a night of baseball in South Jersey, and I would say it was a little quiet in the first half. In the second half, the bats came alive. And it changed the tenor between the two of them. You saw it at the end when asked, could they think of anything nice to say about each other? They did not need even 15 seconds. It was very hard for them to get there.
Each of them had one comment, and that was it, and they didn't want to do it anymore. And usually, when we ask that kind of question, right, somebody says, okay, you know, this is this, and this is this, and I think about, she's got a lot of this and this. Nothing. It was boom. And there was a lot of anger there. I really thought we had a chance, and maybe it's naive, I thought we had a chance at the beginning based on what we had, our discussions up here with the people who were here from supporting them.
All right, Bill, we'll come back to you in just a moment. We want to go to Mikie Sherrill now talking to reporters.
All right.
Why do you constantly use the term misinformation to describe contested political candidates? Often misinformation has been used to justify censorship, especially on the internet. You said that you're the better for the candidates on free speech. So why the constant use of that terminology?
I guess because it just seems a little aggressive all the time to keep saying that he's lying. Yeah, Charlie.
As you mentioned in the debate, you stated your opposition to releasing your records, your military records at West. Can you explain, though, how the investigators generally came to the conclusion that you had not informed on your peers, on your classmates? How did they reach that, and would they confront you with some information that you share initially, or can you explain it?
There were hundreds of people in my class that spoke to investigators. When I did, I told them what I knew.
Congresswoman, Trump campaign your opponent painted you as a New Jersey transplant out of the New Jersey voters. Do you think that's fair, and do you think it's something that voters care about?
You know, I guess it's just odd because he seems so out of touch with New Jersey voters to me. So I found it really odd that he gave Trump an A, and that he not only, you know, didn't sort of duck the question on Gateway, but he actually defended the president's decision to freeze the Gateway tunnel funding. I thought that was odd. I thought it was weird he didn't have an answer for, you know, his opioid company or his... I think New Jersey voters care about somebody who's going to fight for them, and I think they know it's me.
The claim that he killed tens of thousands of children, was there a specific number you're citing, or
So he was part of he had a publication that published misinformation saying opioids were safe, propaganda from the opioid companies when they knew that people were getting addicted and dying. And then the opioid companies came to him to develop an app to go forward and to show people who wanted opioids what to say to their doctor. So the companies, even though they knew that people were dying at this point, so the companies could keep selling more, even to people who were addicted, giving them the roadmap to getting more opioids from doctors. So as he was publishing this information, as he was being requested to develop an app, he was selling his, he made millions selling his company. The opioid companies made billions. And at that time, tens of thousands of New Jerseyans were dying from overdoses on opioids.
So he's responsible for the content that was on the app? Is that what you're saying?
I think he's responsible for publicizing the propaganda from opioid companies when he was saying opioids were safe and the publishing company was saying they were safe and people were dying.
You're holding him responsible for the content of that went on the app and in the publication, but how do you know that he knew, you made that reference in a couple of your remarks, how do you know that he knew that people were dying because of the opioids? I mean, where's the evidence of that?
Well, I guess he's not really expressed anything about this. I think there's a lot we don't know. I think he continues to not be very transparent about it.
You've done a lot of these campaign events. This is the first most of us have heard about the opioid in Jackson. Am I wrong on that, or is this something that you...
Yeah, this was out in the 2021 campaign.
During this campaign cycle, is this something that...
No, I mentioned it in the last debate. I think we've put some other stuff out on it.
Given that you'll have to work with the mayor of New York City, if Zohar Mamdani were elected, do you reciprocate his endorsement, yes or no?
I'm not getting involved in the New York mayor's race.
New York City about the tunnel and
Your opponent has said that he would, if he got elected, he would reverse our state's plastic bag ban. Do you have a position on that?
I think we shouldn't be using plastic bags.
Something on the ban specifically.
Thanks so much for doing this. I've heard that there is some concern around apathy among, for example, Black voters and whether or not they feel like they're being heard right now and whether they're being reported to. And one of the things I've heard is that they want to hear more specifics from you on what you would do to support those communities. So I wanted to get a sense of, what do you say to Black and Hispanic voters who might feel apathetic about voting in this election, and what specifically are you looking to do that you think will help better their lives, specifically policies that may help be tailored to them or others?
So as I go and speak to hundreds and hundreds of Black and Hispanic voters around the state, the number one thing I hear about, like with most New Jerseyans, is affordability. And so when I speak to voters, I talk a lot to some of our communities, like the Black and Hispanic community, about increasing that first-time homebuyers program, because we know that about 70% of white families and only about 30% of Black families in the state own their homes. And so that first-time homebuyer can help people get into that first home and actually create generational wealth. We also have a huge issue here with Black maternal health that's been well publicized. And so there is a lot more, this administration is putting a lot more resources into some of the deserts, the maternal health deserts. I would also, I'm also going to work to get midwives and doulas, which is a specific ask from the Black community that people feel would see better outcomes. There are all some small maternal health OBGYNs in different communities. I'd like to get them better resourced to continue to help the community. And so again and again, it's really taking on those specific issues. And finally, with the state disparity study, which has pointed out the egregious nature of how few Black and Hispanic business people get access to state contracts. So I am going to rectify that as well. Oh, that's it. Thank you all.
We just heard the comments from Mikie Sherrill. Let's go back to the debate hall now and the moderators, Tam and Bill. Bill, we apologize that we had to cut you off a second time, but we wanted to get the candidates' comments in, as you totally understand.
No problem. The floor is yours now.
Right. Please finish your thought and your assessment, as you were the one kind of steering this along with Tam.
Go ahead. What's your response to what she just said? Because that was big stuff.
It was big stuff. We could tell the surprise on his face when she came out with some of that information, and you saw him say, "Shame on you," that he really was a little stunned. And it'll be interesting to see some of the follow-up stories, I think, for both of them in the ensuing days over her military records, over his company. And I think it gives you a sense that all the days between now and Election Day are going to be a bit tart, a bit sharp, a lot of ads, and a lot of it very hard-edged.
Yeah, I thought that there were times when I really did think, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, I really thought, okay, this is going to be all right, because we were speeding through that, and they talked about it, they disagreed with stuff, but then you could see that they were starting to talk about themselves and trash each other. This is the first time she's come after him like that in the entire campaign. She feels like he went after something with the Navy thing. And let me just remind everyone of this. 130 people were in that graduating class that were not going to, they didn't walk with their colleagues. They did not get to walk. She was one of the majority that knew about what was happening. She was not part of it, like other people weren't, but she didn't also think on her fellow people from the Navy. So she has said that. That was told in some of the documents that we talked about and gave birth to when we get the story. So that was something that, and afterwards, there was a feeling that was sort of not going anywhere. Although, remember, it was an 8-point gap until that, and all of a sudden they were neck and neck. Now I think it's 3% or something before this debate. We will see. One more thing I wanted to ask your opinion about, and your guys too, because I really want to hear what you got. His position is like arm's length against Trump. He doesn't want to talk about that. He doesn't want people to think, who are not people who support Trump, but other people in New Jersey, that, hey, I'm not his dog here, right? He doesn't have control of me.
Artful or a missed opportunity. If you look at the polling in the state, about a third of the state defines itself as MAGA, about half of the state defines itself as being against it. But as we've often seen, if you don't indeed embrace the people who are MAGA, they can get upset about it. But I think in the last debate, what he figured out is trying to push it away, say, I like things in the big, beautiful bill, not talk about Trump, talk about what he's going to do with New Jersey, not talk about Trump, and hoping that people look at the list of things that he's talking about, and that's what they go to. I wanted to point out something about, it felt like a debate in two parts. We were whipping through questions in the first half. I was a little worried we were going to run out of questions because they were being so studious and so polite. Then they got into a little bit of an exchange over the gateway where she was sort of like, you're not answering the question, and he wanted to say, yes, I am, no, I'm not. And then it's like when teams go into the locker room when they're getting beaten, and then they realize, I better come out swinging. This is it. The last time we're on the stage together, I better go for it. And all of a sudden, we saw two very different people show up on this stage. And once she lodged that broadside against him about his company, the feelings between them completely changed. It was no longer just a what's your policy debate.
You got to see the whole thing too, you guys. I'd love to have your instant take on that, if you want to.
Well, we don't want to give our opinion on it because that's what we have our two analysts here for. But there were certainly some charged moments, Bill. And actually, I want to pivot and show you a clip because you guys just talked about the military record. This was something that you said also shifted the energy in the room. Let's take a look at it. Ciattarelli is calling for Sherrill to give up those records.
At the last debate, Mikie said that she was the most transparent gubernatorial candidate of all time. If she's so transparent, then approve the release of her disciplinary records at the Naval Academy so we can know why it is that she was punished. There was a cheating scandal in the early 1990s while she was there. We know for a fact that she wasn't allowed to participate in the graduation ceremony. We know for a fact that her name was not listed in the commencement exercise program. She says it's because she didn't turn in classmates. That's the honor code at West Point. That's not the honor code at the Naval Academy. You don't get punished for that.
We have a federal government under the Trump administration that has released paperwork on tons of people and their social security information. Seniors come to me all the time. We have a president who's told governors they have to turn over all of this information, things like voting records and license plate numbers. And we now have a candidate who's turned over all of my information to reporters. I'm certainly not going to open up my classmates' hundreds of records so he can rampage through them on a witch hunt. He should take responsibility. He should turn back those records in which he still holds.
Okay.
Bill and Tam, this issue isn't going anywhere. He is calling for the records. What do you think?
And guys, don't you think
it's interesting watching the clip back, because in the room it was so quiet that when they would do those things, it would almost sort of drop.
Yep.
But watching the tape and imagining people at home reacting to it and going back and forth, it is going to be real. And I think that's why Bill is asking you guys a little bit of your response, because it was radio silence in here, but you might have been someplace where people went, whoo, or had some sort of response. The polling is going to be fascinating.
I think that since it happened a week and a half ago, until tonight, I don't think that it had much effect. I really don't. You know, if it were going to have a big effect, if it was going to have a big effect, we would have seen it in the polling, and the polling went the other way a little bit. So I'm just not sure about it. And it's going to be really interesting to see in the next couple of days what the reaction will be to voters if they do polls on this, and certainly at the ballot box with what she brought up, because I have never seen him that angry.
And because he looked completely surprised. And
Yeah.
I also think sometimes in these events, it's almost like trial balloons. Campaigns throw things up. She had to know he was going to go after the military records. And that turn at the end, getting my information, they want to get your information. Is that something that's going to all of a sudden make this issue come alive with voters? And his moment of saying, oh my goodness, that was just so low, and then they go back and forth. How is that going to play with voters?
Final thing, if you want, we could talk all night because we're kind of high from all this. I will say this. All that stuff seems less important than what the average person in this great state is thinking about what the future's holding. The whole question about money is a big deal. And the people who don't have any, which is increasing in the tri-state area to be sure, and in much of the states, this is a big deal for them. And that's what people really want to know about. We had a brief thing we talked about to the people who came here to support each candidate. And we really said, this is a great thing that we're doing, that you're doing, that they're doing. It's a great thing for America to do. Have these kind of debates and discussions about where we're going as a country and where do we head. And I thought I was, sort of mind blowing myself a little bit, saying, well, of course, that's not what's going to happen tonight. They're going to yell at each other. But I really think that the people out there listening, they don't care about some of that stuff. What they do care about is, how do we get money? How do we get our schools to get improved? How do we stop all the things that are bad in this country? We ask the question about, what do you do when all of a sudden something's bad happening and you're worried about what's happening to your children? All that's what people care about. And I wanted to hear more of that. I really did.
It will be interesting because on that, I felt as though they both kind of stuck to their stump speeches, what you heard in the first debate, what you've heard in their ads. If that has swayed you one way or the other, then you're kind of already in that camp. I don't know that they pulled anybody new in on those pocketbook issues tonight, but I do think people got a chance to take more of a measure of them as people and whether or not I want to live with this person for the next 4 years.
There you go. We were just here for a couple hours here today. Many hours. It's been a pleasure working with you. It really is.
It was
We've known each other and we have never worked together before.
It was a love
25
fest here.
years.
Yeah, there's love everywhere here.
Well, you guys did a terrific job.
Yeah,
the
you
questions were
certainly
very insightful. In a large part, we did learn about their positions. They reiterated several themes, which we talked about here on the desk, well rehearsed in a lot of ways. But I do think that the headline that is going to steal away from some of those core issues about cost of living and all of that, perhaps will be Mikie Sherrill accusing Jack Ciattarelli of killing kids, which is what she did tonight.
Yeah.
And I think that the military records continue to follow her in the sense of why she won't just release them. Was it truly a Freedom of Information Act release? Because that's what he's alleging. He's going to have to answer to that. And then why he was able to or chose to give President Trump an A grade. But when you ask him, Tam, whether or not you're part of the MAGA movement, he said, I'm part of the New Jersey movement. Clearly towing the line there, not wanting to be too far to perhaps President Trump's side. So while there was a lot of interesting things talked about tonight, it will be fascinating to see if this Real Clear Politics average poll is more of what we're seeing, which is a shrinking of the lead that she had, or whether or not voters are going to go to the box and say, how am I going to get the kids to school? What school? How am I going to pay for groceries and all of that? So Tam and Bill, we appreciate it.
He's in a tough position, don't you think?
I think
he's in a tough position a little bit. He wants to have Trump supporters, but he doesn't want the people the majority of New Jerseyites who are not Trump supporters, he doesn't want them to go too far away either.
It's a fascinating race, which is also why you saw him praise Josh Shapiro in neighboring Pennsylvania, who is a moderate Democrat doing things more down the middle. And so we'll see how it all shakes out. We could talk all the way until November 4th, but unfortunately,
thanks, you guys. You guys did
to talk about till then for
sure.
You
did an excellent job. Thank you again. Well, I want to now bring in our two analysts again. You know, we were talking about the military record, which really doesn't speak to policy. This is really about trust. This is about the issue of leadership. So with that on the table, also a big night tonight was about affordability. We've been talking about this. You know, what about our kids' education? What about property taxes? And two very different approaches. Who succeeded?
It's really tough to say because we've heard these lines now many times, right? We've seen this ground covered before, but maybe voters are seeing it for the first time. So when Jack Ciattarelli talks about a new funding formula, that is clearly aimed at voters in towns who feel shortchanged. So it's places like Toms River, it's places like Jackson, it's places like Middletown. That really resonates for them because they feel shortchanged. The reality is their student populations have shrunk, and that's why they're getting less money. It's very cut and dry. That's the formula. But he is really throwing them a lifeline and a bone that he wants them to respond to, and I think that they probably will. I think it probably resonates very strongly there. In other communities, I don't think it has as much of an impact on towns that aren't getting as much aid or towns that don't have a beef with how much aid they're getting. I don't think it's as important there.
And Sherrill, what are your thoughts? Was Sherrill successful in saying that she's the better candidate when we're talking about affordability?
You know, I think this really comes down to the voters and who actually turns out by Election Day, because it depends on how these voters who turn out for them perceive these messages. We have two competing visions, one about fighting Trump, one about perhaps maybe a more moderate right economic message that has succeeded in New Jersey in the past. And now it's about competing attacks. We have on the one side the West Point, we have on the other side now about the app and about opioids. And the opioid crisis hit New Jersey hard. So this is something that could potentially resonate. But I think on both of these sides, both campaigns need to back up their attacks. So, you know, this is going to be a competition now until the very end with both these visions and these attacks on both sides.
And they also had their own message. You know, in the very beginning, he kept saying, we need change. And her message is, I'm fighting for you.
That's right. Yeah, it's thematically very different because she knows that she really can't be the candidate of change. She is new to Trenton, but her party is not new to the majority in Trenton. So she's got to sort of approach it from a little bit of a different angle than Ciattarelli can as the change agent in the race. And I thought the fight for you was as good a line as you're going to get, as good a theme as you're going to get, to point out the specific harms and the ways that his policies, he's pretty detailed on them, but they're the wrong ones for New Jersey. I thought that was an effective argument.
And she also kept this theme going of, I will fight for you. He says, I'm from New Jersey. She tried to hit home that I will fight for New Jersey. Do you think that landed?
You know, I think time will tell, right? But the optics, he was clearly playing with optics there. His favorite town is Raritan, a hardworking blue-collar town. You know, he's from there. He has a legacy within New Jersey. Again, those competing visions of, I'm in New Jersey, but she's saying, well, I'm going to be that barrier between the federal government and our state. So, you know, I think it depends how these messages land, especially what we see in the media narrative in the days to come, and how voters interpret that and if they actually turn out. That's the bottom line, whether they turn out or not. Is it going to look like 2021? Will it look like 2024? We just don't know.
Government shutdown? Another big issue, right?
Yeah.
We're in what, day 8?
And whether or not you tie that to the tunnel, hold up the tunnel funding or not, you know, which she rejected. She said that's not what's going on here. This is about him halting the funding. You know, it's not as potent an issue in New Jersey as it is Virginia. Virginia, it is a federal worker issue.
Which is the only other state
that has a governor's
race
race this year. Exactly. It's potent there. Here, it's been kind of a sleepy issue, but this is, the gateway funding is a specific harm to New Jersey.
Yeah.
And so bringing it home, making it not a generic attack on Trump, but a very specific New Jersey harm that Trump is bringing, is the key to her landing these with and resonating with voters.
And there was an interesting caveat there, because the gateway funding was halted because President Trump wanted to continue this investigation of DEI as part of the hiring process.
And the Second Avenue subway wasn't that?
Also threatening the Second Avenue subway part, but the nuance there that Ciattarelli basically ignored and said that this shutdown, it would take months for it to all play out. Let's listen to this exchange as it happened there in New Brunswick.
I know he likes to excuse President Trump from everything because that's who he works for, basically. But here are the facts. 1 in 3 children are on Medicaid. Really, there's going to be about a $5 billion hole in the budget because of Trump's cuts to Medicaid. He's cut off funding for some of our innovative power as we're facing utility crisis. It's going to drive up costs for families by hundreds of dollars. He's just taking away Title I funding for our schools, driving up our taxpayer rates. So that's why I'm fighting that. But make no mistake, I'll also fight Trenton to bring down costs for families.
Work to reopen government. When there were shutdowns during the Biden era, she voted every time for the continuing resolution to keep government, get it open again. This time around, with Trump in the White House, she's voted no on the resolutions to keep government open. I hope the shutdown ends within moments. I hope it ends tomorrow. We've got 22,000 New Jerseyans that are being furloughed because of the shutdown. But this is what happens in Washington, D.C. The job of a governor is to get things done. I have relationships with people in the legislature. We'll be able to work together to get things done.
Avery Harper, let's bring you into this conversation. This happens, as we mentioned, during this federal shutdown. She is in Congress right now. How do you think they were able to navigate this issue?
I think this was a really strong moment for Jack Ciattarelli. I mean, the fact that Mikie Sherrill is currently in Congress, and when you think about congressional approval, it is in the dumps. Most Americans look at Congress as dysfunctional, and this current federal shutdown is reflective of that. I mean, Congress has one job, to fund the government, and they have not been able to do that. And so for him to be able to point at Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill and say, listen, I would get things done. In Congress, they're not getting things done. That was a really strong moment for him. I was surprised, just given how strong that argument is, that he didn't come back to that more often throughout the debate. Instead, he opted to go for what is probably the more salacious claim, is to talk about her military records, to talk about not walking at graduation, whereas talking about Congress being dysfunctional, talking about her maybe inability to get things done as a member of Congress might have been a more strong argument for him.
You know, I'm thinking about National Democrats right now. What they're clearly looking at this issue as a bellwether to the midterms. What are you thinking? You know, are you nervous tonight?
Well, I think there are Democrats tonight who are really happy with Mikie Sherrill's performance, particularly when you talk about the moment that we've all been referencing, which is the bit about the medical publishing company that Jack Ciattarelli had, right? The fact is that the opioid crisis is something that does have the potential to resonate with folks in New Jersey. Again, there are many folks in New Jersey who might have friends or family or just associates who might have been impacted by that. So I think that could be something that's damaging. And I'm surprised, just given how experienced a candidate Jack Ciattarelli is. Mikie Sherrill referenced, you know, in the press conference after the fact that this is something that came up in the 2021 race. Like, why did he not have an answer for that? That is going to be a question that Jack Ciattarelli and his campaign are going to have to answer.
It was so much so you could tell it hit a button, or it appeared to hit a button, because he called her desperate, and that's when you had that exchange back and forth. You talked about National Democrats. Mamdani's name was brought up. Zohran Mamdani, who's running here as a Democratic Socialist for the mayor of New York City. Were you surprised at all in the sort of the backdrop, whether it be President Trump? Phil Murphy's name was brought up, although not as much as President Trump. But how much of a focus this race does have, whether it be nationally or even here with neighboring New York City?
Right. I mean, Phil Murphy is not a polarizing figure like President Donald Trump is. And so I think that is reflected in how many times we saw Mikie Sherrill bring up President Trump. She knows that that is a powerful mobilizing factor to try and get not only Democratic voters out to the polls, but also independents who might be uncomfortable with what they're seeing come out of Washington. It's not surprising to me that Mikie Sherrill did not want to weigh in on what's happening across the river in New York City because there's no political upside to her for her to associate herself with someone who describes themselves as a democratic socialist. She is trying to operate within a very moderate lane of this Democratic Party, and so I wasn't surprised to see her shirk talking about him.
You know, let's talk about the war chest. She's got about $2.6 million more than Ciattarelli at this point, which can prove pivotal in these final weeks.
Yeah, so one of the things you have to know about New Jersey's system running for governor is that it's a public financing system. So you raise the first $6 or $7 million, and then you get matched on a 2-for-1 basis after that. And each campaign agrees to a cap of $18 million. So you're right when you say that he has spent it faster, and that leaves more money for her at the end. This was an advantage she had in the primary, too. She squirreled it away for the last minute, and it really played to her advantage. Of course, we have to say, the other complicating factor is all the outside money, the PAC money, the independent expenditure money. And she seems to have the lion's share of that too, although we won't really know until after the election how much Jack had to match her with that.
If you're just somebody in New Jersey, maybe you got a family in Montclair or Raritan, as the two towns that were mentioned there, you're all around the dinner table, you just got the kids to sleep. I know that process. I know how chaotic that is at night. And you're trying to finish the homework, get the practice stuff washed before the next day. And you're listening to these two talk. Did anything that they said tonight sway your opinion one way or the other before you went into tonight? If you were one of these very few, maybe unicorns who are undecided at this point. Ashley, did anything that you heard tonight as you're trying to make the dinner and get everybody off to sleep, did anything catch your ear and say, oh, you know what, I like that? Or maybe turn you away and say, that's not for me?
You know, I think anything that focused on affordability, taxes, especially property taxes, we have one of the highest, if not the highest in the nation. I think those buzzwords are going to be what voters gravitate to for either candidate. We also have to remember we are in a highly polarized, hyper-partisan climate right now. And so, you know, anything candidates say is going to be looked at through the lens of partisanship. So unless it's one of those swing voting unicorns that we talked about, you know, it's going to be siding with your candidate and also hearing how the media interpret everything that we saw tonight in the days to come.
I do want to play an exchange on the affordability right after Mike, if you want to weigh in on that, and then we'll hear what the candidate said about some of these issues that people are affected by every day.
Well, I think a lot of it people have heard before, so it's not really moving them off the fence. The grading Trump as an A and the Gateway project, specifically the harm to New Jersey, those could perk me up, right, potentially. But the one that was new that I want to hear more about, if I'm an average voter, maybe tell me more about that opioid thing. Let me see what that app was all about. Let me learn whether or not kids really died here. That's the one that I think there's going to be some follow-up.
Let's hear what they said about affordability.
We also have to take care of the property tax crisis, something you won't hear my opponent ever talk about. We need a new school funding formula in New Jersey. With a new school funding formula, we can have a more equitable distribution of state aid, and in so doing, reduce the property tax burden with our local school districts. We also have two other things that are driving the affordability crisis in New Jersey. Housing. We need more affordable housing. We just need to be smart about the way we do it. Another thing that's driving the affordability crisis is childcare, and I have a specific plan on how to relieve that burden for families with young children.
So none of that is actually going to drive down costs for anyone here, and that's no surprise because my opponent has voted against over $1 billion in property tax relief for people. He's voted to raise taxes at every level of government in which he's served, and he continues to propose different actions that will raise taxes on the people of New Jersey. So my opponent likes to talk about how he's from New Jersey, but anybody who's actually fighting for New Jersey would not raise taxes at every single level of government in which he's served, voting to raise taxes. He's voted against over $1 billion in property tax relief. He's against tax relief for seniors, and he's for Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, which would undermine the ability to deduct almost $30 billion taxes from New Jerseyans. So here's the thing. He says he's from New Jersey, but he's not fighting for New Jerseyans.
So what are your thoughts on this, on the affordability issue?
Well, I thought they had perfectly good points that they both made, right? She talks about electricity and healthcare and housing. Those are three resonant points. Those are definitely pain points for people. He talks about electricity prices through RGGI, the school funding formula, affordable housing, and childcare. I think that resonates. Both of those lists are certainly field tested, poll tested, well-worn issues and pain points for most New Jerseyans.
Ashley?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think maybe talking about that utility rate crisis may kind of zing more with voters than the RGGI plan, which the average voter may not really understand. But again, both of them putting forth very compelling arguments when it comes to what is one of the top issues in New Jersey.
And another top issue is the issue of immigration. Ciattarelli says from day one, I'm going to make sure there's not one city in New Jersey that is a sanctuary city. Let's take a look. We've got a piece from that moment.
But I've always been for comprehensive immigration reform, as have many people. We got very close, even with some very conservative members of the Senate. And that involves securing our borders, creating a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients, TPS recipients, people who are working and paying taxes. Having that pathway could be so helpful to our economy. So that's a very clear answer to this. I think Jack works to say anything he can to anyone, but at the end of the day, he's always going to do what Trump tells him to do.
Avery, immigration is certainly a hot button issue across the country and certainly here in the tri-state and in particular New Jersey. How did that play tonight?
I think for Jack Ciattarelli, when you look at his message, which was one essentially of law and order, right? He said that he wants for local law enforcement to be able to partner with ICE, to be able to partner with the National Guard. That is a message that resonates and has been a boon to Republicans in many different races. And so you see him sort of following that line. You hear Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill there saying that she was trying to work toward comprehensive immigration reform. There has not been the political will in Washington to get that over the finish line. And so it's hard for her to make that argument to voters who are looking for change and looking for change now. But I do think when you look at the images of what we saw outside ICE facilities after we saw Ras Baraka arrested, those sorts of images are going to be powerful in terms of getting Democratic voters out to the polls, because there are folks who are really uncomfortable with the idea of these ICE raids and communities who are sort of caught in the crossfire of all of this.
And Michael, let's get you in there. Sherrill had a different approach to this. She's saying that we need to trust the process.
Right, right. And so I give Jack Ciattarelli credit for trying to come up with a plan that he thinks will sound palatable, right? That he thinks will appeal. The problem he has when he starts to rattle off, well, if you're a criminal, you got to go. If you have tried to rip off our system, you got to go. Well, the people who he's trying to appeal to, that this issue matters to, know that that has not been the policy. Even though that's what they were promised in 2024, that has not been the implementation, right? That isn't who's being rounded up, right? It's not the criminals or the bad actors. It's family members. It's it's law-abiding citizens. It's people who have owned restaurants for generations. And so that's not a popular thing. And people have to square with his plan with the reality of what they've seen since the last election.
The evolution of the immigration focus has been really fascinating to watch, because if you look at President Trump and how he was able to get elected, in large part was when Greg Abbott started busing migrants from Texas here to places like New York and New Jersey, and people who were very pro-immigration started saying, we can't afford it. We can't handle this influx, and it's just not feasible. Now you have the transition of these ICE raids across the country. The optics are much different, so you don't have people swelling schools and everything like that. You have people being shot with rubber bullets, and then you have Congress people being arrested for trying to ask what's going on. How effective do you think that they were to sort of make their case tonight of what they would do with this issue that continues?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, immigration is kind of a mid-tier polling level issue. It's not one of the top 4 most important problems in the state. So I would say, again, it's really certain voters that are caring about this issue first and foremost, even if they do find it important to everyone. If it's seen as important, I would say that Ciattarelli is definitely trying to moderate, calling it recognition, not calling it citizenship. But both candidates are being very careful in terms of how they're phrasing these issues. This is kind of a decided issue in New Jersey. Again, this is falling on the social issue side. But both are trying to do this delicate dance of not upsetting their base, but also trying to court from the middle.
Another issue front and center, the National Guard, bringing in the National Guard into the state of New Jersey. Let's hear the candidates on this issue and get your reaction on the other side.
Unless there is an insurrection or some sort of crisis where the National Guard could come in and the president invokes the Insurrection Act, he's moving these National Guard troops across the country illegally against the Insurrection Act, and military members should not be on our streets. It makes people less safe. It makes people feel less safe.
I appoint the Attorney General. I appoint the 21 county prosecutors. I appoint the superintendent of the state police. And we're going to be a law and order state again. We do that by not having sanctuary cities, and we do that by reforming bail reform. Cashless bail has created a professional criminal in New Jersey who's learned how to game the system.
Avery, Jack Ciattarelli also said that we're going to return to a law and order state, and he also talked about how there won't be a need for the National Guard to come into cities in New Jersey because it will be a law and order state if he were to be elected. How effective do you think that they were in talking about this issue that so many people are seeing on cable news at night and seeing on their social media feeds?
Right. I mean, I think there we're hearing Jack Ciattarelli try and echo the messaging of the Trump administration. That is something that is an appeal directly to Republican voters who are concerned about public safety, about crime. But, you know, the thing is that even in some Republican-led states, we're seeing the National Guard and the Trump administration consider deploying the National Guard there. So I don't think that just by virtue of his leadership, should he be elected, that would keep the Trump administration from necessarily deploying the National Guard. So, you know, I take some issue with that argument in the first place. I think what we heard Congresswoman Sherrill speaking to is the concern that there is in places across the country for the images that we're seeing, the militarized force that we're seeing be deployed in places across the country. And there's deep discomfort on the part of many voters with that. And so, you know, it remains to be seen how this is all going to play out with voters, but both are making strong appeals to their camps.
We know you'll be watching closely. ABC News Political Director Avery Harper, we always appreciate your perspective. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you, Avery. So, Ashley, do you think that Sherrill did enough to show that she could tackle crime?
You know, I think this is why she leans on that fighter narrative, the Navy pilot narrative, because we know there are gendered implications, number one, when we're talking about public safety and crime. We know that candidates of different genders are seen in different ways. And she obviously wants to seem to be tough on crime and you know, a proponent of public safety. So I think for her voters, she certainly for her party base has done enough on crime. And I think she was trying to set forth a compelling message for those voters in the middle who are still deciding that she would also be tough on crime and enhance public safety in the state.
And did she address the issue of National Guard troops coming here enough?
You know, I think she leaned into, like we were saying with the ICE raids, it's a thing of optics, right? And these optics don't look good. I would assume that we would have New Jerseyans, you know, probably uneasy if something like that were to happen within the state. So I think the optics are in her favor on those kinds of issues because she can point to what's happening, what we see in the news in other cities.
Well, I want to get your final thoughts on that, but just to kind of tee you up and maybe this will fold into it because we're running up against the end of the hour. Micah, in the remaining days that we have until November 4th in this election, answer this question that I asked both of you before. But Mikie Sherrill will win this election if she blanks, and then same for Jack Ciattarelli.
I think if she can tie Jack Ciattarelli to the specific New Jersey harms of President Trump, of Gateway, of the military records, of the National Guard, right? The point that I had wanted to make was that answer from Jack Ciattarelli is a moderation, like Ashley was talking about. His last answer that he gave a different New York station was, yes, bring in the National Guard, bring them to the boardwalk at New Jersey Shore, right? He's changed that answer now because he knows that that's much more controversial at this point.
And just real quick, we're in the final stretch of Election Day on November 4th. What does he need to do? What does she need to do?
Well, I think they both need to get out their bases. They clearly need to, motivate Democrats and Republicans, but they also need to win over the lion's share of the undecided vote. The closer this race is, the more decisive that is. So they've got to appeal to their base and to the middle ground at the same time.
Ashley, what does she need to do?
They have to make sure that there is turnout. That was the problem in 2024, why we saw such a close margin between Harris and Trump. They have to make sure these voters turn out.
It's all about the
Crucial.
ground game. Thank you both for joining us, adding so much insight to tonight's debate. And you've been watching our continuing coverage of the final New Jersey gubernatorial debate here on ABC7NY.
We hope tonight was helpful as you try to make your decision if you haven't already, as we see one of the moments of sort of cordial meeting there. After the debate, they shook hands. Who will be New Jersey's 57th governor? Now it's your opportunity to weigh in. November 4th is voting day, but early voting in New Jersey starts October 25th and is available through November 2nd.
And again, that's ahead of Election Day on November 4th. And be sure to vote. I'm Sade Benoit.
And I'm Mike Marzo. So great to have you all tonight, Micah and Ashley. We appreciate your perspectives as always. Eyewitness News will have the latest ahead of Election Day. And if you want to get caught up on all of the developments tonight,
we've got everything you need.
Everything you could possibly need to make your choice and voice your choice for this major election in the state of New Jersey. For Sade and me, and for all of us here at Eyewitness News, thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.